Let me take you on a little trip, my supersonic ship. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day. Morning, morning. Yeah, remember to hydrate. Hydration is life. In all things, we serve the founders. Just a little gem in our motivation for you guys. All right, let's bring up our first guest. Welcome, welcome. We have our first guest deleted.
Hello.
Deleted, how's it going?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Deleted, do you believe in a god?
Can I have some money?
No.
Please?
If you're gonna ask for money, at least, like, you know, do a better job. What? All right, let's bring up our next guest. Mouse
Hello?
Edits, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Mouse Edits, do you believe in God?
I do, but I have a different question, if you don't mind, just really quick.
As long as it's on topic, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yesterday, I'm an astrophotographer, and so I was just wondering, I could have helped you out with like photos and stuff. So, but
I usually don't bring on friendlies.
oh, okay. Sorry,
just
my
because.
bad.
No, you're good. You're good. Take care. There's two exceptions, two friendly exceptions that I've, in fact, I think two friendly exceptions that I've ever brought on. One is Ems, because I don't know the Quran very well, and Ems does, and I trust Ems. And one is Pro Photo Josh, also known as Hasselblad, who again is a professional photographer, has been for decades. And also I trust Pro Photo Josh. I know that he has good rhetorical skills and he has good knowledge. And I know that, you know, that whole thing. So those are the only people I will ever bring up, at least at the moment, because I know them, I trust them. You know, it's very, 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 very exclusive club, if you will. I don't know if I've had Ian up before. I mean, maybe I have, but not as like an expert witness, if you will. I don't know if I've had Ian up. Convinced to believe is a bit of a paradox? No, that's exactly how beliefs are formed. You're convinced of something, and so you are led to believe it. I know Ian has you up. Yeah, Ian brings me up all the time. Ian has no problem bringing up friendlies. I just never have. YouTube audio might be weird or choppy. Is YouTube audio weird? Let me check on my end. It says that everything's excellent. I may have brought Danny up once. The thing is like these are very, very, you know, those are perhaps exceptions rather than the rules. No, yeah, there's no Ask a Physicist today. I basically need to get more debate content so that I can fill out the schedule, because I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. And so I want to make sure that I have stuff for you guys to watch over the next 2 weeks while I'm not live streaming. When are you playing KSP again? It won't be until after, after I'm back. Yeah, sorry about that. Someone could convince you to believe in their God. Would it still be belief or knowledge? Knowledge is a kind of belief. not all beliefs are knowledge. Sorry, yeah, not all beliefs are knowledge. All knowledge is belief. What's the point if you're not going to believe anyway? Well, I will believe if somebody can convince me. Why ask to convince you if you won't be convinced, if you're already convinced there's no God? Look, I'm convinced there's no God because the arguments have been offered are not good. The evidence have been offered are not good. But if you have good arguments, if you have good evidence, I'm happy to be convinced. Yeah, Danny is very, very good. Danny's a teacher. Like, that's his day job. He's very, very good at this. Let's bring up Lami Supporter. Lami Supporter, how's it going?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you help me study for my biology exam?
Nope, not today. Also, I'm not a biologist.
Please, bro.
I'm not a biologist. What? What do you think of the low priors argument? I think it's not very convincing to other people, but it is a good, it is like, we're trying to understand why people don't have belief. It's a plausible explanation. Our debate proves that even with God, you still reject God already. Oh, Reflect King. Oh, you sweet summer child. Also, I heard that you're like a neo-Nazi or something. Be rad. How's it going?
Going good. I would argue though that from between secularists and religion, at this point, I think I am more on board with Christianity being our foundation as opposed to people's feelings.
Why should I believe in Christianity?
More structure for society.
There's more structure for society. Okay, but that doesn't say anything about the truth of Christianity, right?
I think it does. I think when you look at a society run with a religious foundation versus what we have today, the fact that people are questioning the use of the word gender versus sex is, I mean, it's just, as far as I'm concerned, the secularist thought process viewpoint, it's unraveling society.
To be clear, none of that has anything to do with the truth of Christianity. Whether or not it's true that having Christianity as a national religion or whatever would be a good thing is completely unrelated to whether or not Christianity, the claims that Christianity makes, are true. These are distinct propositions. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah, and what I'm trying to do is think where I can start seeing the structure, the utility of it. So, damn it.
You see the utility of it because it's authoritarian, and so it grants certain cultural and social requirements that if you don't obey them, you're either socially ostracized or you're, sentenced to some sort of, or you're given some sort of sentence by the authoritarian government that's in place that obeys the Christian tradition. This is what happened during the, this is what happened up until really the French Revolution, this kind of Enlightenment period. We have examples of people like Galileo who were put in house arrest by the Catholic Church because he dared propose that the Earth goes around the sun.
Right, but that makes sense.
That's the authoritarian social structure that you're yearning for, and it doesn't say anything about how true the claims of Christianity are.
Well, the way I see it is the only way something of this nature could have even have gained influence is if the structure of society was in fact in decline or needed instruction, i.e., it's hard for you to convince me before the Bible that everything was hunky-dory. The way they were handling slavery in those days was probably better.
Are you familiar with the Roman Republic period?
To a degree.
So it ended before Jesus was born. This was genuinely a republic. This was arguably the golden era of Rome. After the Republic period, when I guess Caesar took over, and the Republic fell and it became the Roman Empire, this is when Christianity blossomed, actually.
And then how much further until the fall of Rome?
It depends on what you count as Rome. If you count the Byzantine Empire as Rome, then it was like the 1400s. If you're talking about the Western Roman Empire, it's like 500 or something years. But the point is the reason why Christianity spread so much was because the Roman Empire was authoritarian and enforced it on their population. They spread it through the sword. The same way that the Spanish conquistadors did, the same way that the British and the French did in Africa, North America. Like that's why Christianity spread. You
But
think it's spread
this what I would
naturally?
argue might be one of the truths that we can look into. By doing what, regardless of how the method of doing so, it built up the nation. It gave them.
You can
ability.
justify that this. You can say that this granted some sort of good features for society because maybe you're in favor of like authoritarianism or whatever. It's just not the case that you needed Christianity in order to have a reasonably well-structured society. Look to the Roman Republic for this example. Secondly, we know that there are flourishing societies that don't have Christianity as their foundation, and we know that there are societies that are not flourishing that do have Christianity at their foundation. So it seems like this is more of a question about whether or not you like authoritarianism rather than freedom. I happen to be in favor of freedom, but like, man, if you like the authority, more power to you. But it says nothing about the truth of Christianity.
I would disagree with the whole idea, though, that these countries were able to flourish without it. I think because now we live in a more civilized world. Granted, we're seeing some chaos right now. Yeah, when you don't have to actually worry about who your neighbor is that you're having to fight, who you're having to combat.
Are you familiar with like the Egyptian civilization?
Again, no.
So Egypt has never been like dominantly Christian, except for a short period of time. I think between like the 200s and the 400s, maybe. There's like a small population of Christians in Egypt, but like Egypt is a functioning state. Now, in the last 50 years or so, they haven't been doing great, and there are perhaps social reasons for that. But they've been a fairly stable nation, not a state, a fairly stable nation for thousands of years with no Christianity at their bedrock. We can also look at China. Again, perhaps you disagree with communism or whatever, but even before communism, they never had a Christian foundation, and they were one of the most stable nations in history.
I was being more broad with religion, and I was being more broad by saying religion in general, I think, gives your society more of a foundational.
Okay, sure. What does that have to do with? I mean, so that may be the case because religion is a good way of enforcing power structures,
right?
And power structures are a good way to, run a society. But like, that doesn't say anything about the truth of those claims. Also, to be clear, you specifically said Christianity.
Right. But once you start jumping to those other regions, obviously, then it's whatever their religion is that kept them glued together. Especially when it came to having to deal with opponents.
Okay, so is your claim that religion is good and therefore it's true?
No, my point would be that the utility of religion in general, assuming you actually have adversaries, things of that nature, is kind of a necessity.
Well, I mean, a necessity, maybe not.
But like I said, as I'm seeing now,
really on topic.
As I'm looking at America right now, I see what the secularist values are and how they come to their conclusions. I'm starting to see now why people need a foundation like Christianity.
So you're talking about like the secularist kind of neoliberal power structures that have been dominant since like the 50s?
Not so much. As a matter of fact, I would actually argue it's around after World War II.
Yeah, that's the 50s. That's the 50s, my guy.
Yeah, I know, and I guess you're right. I can't argue that.
The golden era of the United States. In fact, the United States is richer than it ever has been. People have a higher quality of life than they ever have been. Except I think that there's actually a decline around COVID, but that's neither here nor there.
Right, and I guess I just never thought about it in those terms. When I hear things like neoliberal, I don't think much of them, but now I see exactly what you're saying. Like, I never realized neoliberalism would literally be tied to the war machine, and obviously that is when we had that kind of
and U.S. imperialism and all of these things. But all these things have been very, very good for the United States.
Right, but that was obviously just luck.
I mean, not really.
I mean,
there were consequences as a result of the Second World War, essentially. To say that was luck is a different story. But anyway,
America profited the most out of that war.
Sure. Yeah. And we also invested heavily in sciences because, we recognized that we could take advantage of the science of the scientists. We could bring the scientists over from countries that were devastated by the war, and we invested in that rather than bringing over the priests. We brought over the scientists, right? Keep that in mind. And that's what made that's what led to the economic powerhouse that is the United States. But anyway, it sounds like that you're not here to actually disagree about or to actually talk about the truth of the religious claims. You rather want to say that that authoritarian structures are beneficial for keeping a society orderly, which perhaps is true. So if there's nothing else you want to talk about that's actually on topic, I'm going to let you go. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, take care, B-Rad. How much you guys want to bet that he is super butthurt about... I shouldn't use the word butthurt, but it's just the money only. He's super mad about the about trans people. Like, how much you want to bet? Like, it's definitely the trans folks, right? that are the origin of that claim, of these complaints. All right, let's bring up a guest. Let's bring up Nathan. Nathan, how's it going?
All right, I have a question.
Okay. Before you
I was
ask your
watching the
question, do you mind
stream.
if I ask a quick question? Do you believe in God?
Not really.
Okay. Well, so the live stream is about theists convincing me to believe that their God is real. So if you're not that, then I feel like I should probably move on.
Okay, it's just real quick. If you have
Sure,
like
go
2
ahead.
seconds. Did you ever rescue Valentina from the moon?
I did. Valentina has
You
been
did?
saved.
Okay, that's all I wanted to
yeah,
know.
it's all, you can go watch the live stream. It's on my YouTube channel.
Okay, I was watching that stream. I was like, I gotta see this.
Yep, it happened.
Okay.
All right, take
Thank
care. Sorry, I have to respond to MC Toon. Sorry, I'm just checking some stuff. Oh, we have... Okay, let's bring up Peter. No, Valentina Kerman. Peter, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Peter, do you believe in God?
I believe in a god.
Okay, cool. Which god would that be? Just that way then I don't make any incorrect assumptions about you.
So it would be like the god of Spinoza, as described by Mikio Taku, the theoretical.
Is this... Do you have any substantial disagreements with atheists?
I do.
Okay, what is the substantial disagreement?
That agnosticism is kind of impossible to ignore.
Atheists can be agnostics as well.
Right, but denying a god entirely is part of being, like, not denying a god entirely because of the possibility of it being a possibility. You know what I'm saying? Like, is a part of being an atheist.
I'm asking you whether or not there's a substantive disagreement about worldviews, not about like meta worldviews, but a substantive disagreement about worldviews between you, somebody who believes in Spinoza's God, and an atheist who doesn't believe in any gods. What's the actual like difference in worldview?
That there is some type of creator, that there's like a...
Okay, what is this creator that you think exists? What is it?
I think it's really tough for me to describe because I think it is, and it sucks to have to say, like, kind of beyond comprehension in some ways. But the description that I've heard or read about and can somewhat agree with is that it's some sort of like grand watchmaker, time clockmaker.
So to be clear, that's very much not Spinoza's God.
Okay.
Spinoza's God is a... The best way to put it is that it's making nature divine. Spinoza's God is the view that nature itself is the divine, that nature is the thing that is, in some sense, the ultimate foundation of reality, etc. Which is a hair's breadth away from atheism. But you're making the claim that there is a divine watchmaker, which is just garden variety theism.
Okay. I'm supposing that there is because I can't personally, like, it the whole conversation, I'm a little out of practice, but yeah, what's your question?
Well, look, it seems like you just believe in garden variety theism, or perhaps deism, where there's like some entity, some being with a mind that kind of created the universe in like a creative act. And so I just want to know, why should I think that that's true?
It's hard to argue against the idea that there wouldn't be at least some higher power that created what we know as reality.
So hold on, I just want to parse what you said, because you used the triple negative there. So you said it's hard to argue that there wouldn't be. Wait, what exactly was it that you said? Just say the thing directly rather than using a triple negative. That'd be very much appreciated.
Okay.
Like I was just hard to follow. That's all.
Yeah, that's fair. So arguing against a creator in general is super difficult for me to do as someone who has been atheist most of my life. So finding that the possibility of there being some higher existence beyond our consciousness that may have created our consciousness, maybe I don't want to like throw some crazy shit in here, but maybe even like an alien that's like on some computer somewhere simulating reality, like in simulation theory. Not saying that's what I'm saying entirely, but that's one example. So it's hard to argue against reality not having some sort of creation aspect to it, because of its complexity and because of its design and because of how much is possible with what we have in science.
So, I mean, look, it sounds like you're saying that you can't come up with good arguments against this, so you believe it? Is that roughly it?
To some degree, yes.
Okay, so, I mean, look, there are good arguments against it, against just creators in general, against the simulation, against fine-tuning, against design. I mean, for example, we can take a look at what it would mean for a being. Let's kind of separate the views. There's two possible views here. One is that there's like some alien living in his mom's basement who is simulating our universe. We'll call that like,
or our direct consciousness in each individually within our reality.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's like simulated. It's like simulated by like some guy rather than like some all-powerful thing, right? So it's simulated by some guy. And we'll call that like non-omni-god. And then there's like omni-god, which is like, it's actually not just like some guy, it's like some metaphysical entity that is like responsible for all of reality, not just like our particular little like universe, right? Or our particular conscious experience.
Like alien AI technology or something to it, so that they're using something that is like more powerful than themselves, or that's more powerful than us. That like it's just, I don't know.
But my point is that there's two different versions of the theism that you're proposing. One is kind of like non-omnitheism, where you just have like something that's just like responsible for us, but it itself, like maybe it was born, maybe it'll die, maybe it obeys its own laws of physics, whatever. And then there's like traditional theism, where there's something that's like ultimate. It's like the ultimate foundation for reality, whatever it might be. And that's like 100%. Regular theism. So there's arguments against both of those. The arguments for like against like ultimate theism, those are pretty standard. There's arguments against this thing existing because, or this thing being the origins of our universe, from the fact that this thing would have to be non-temporal. Time is an aspect of our universe, so if it is the foundation of these things, it couldn't be within time itself.
I was hearing a little bit from a couple of days ago that, yeah, you were talking about that. It interested me.
That's certainly a problem. It's hard to make sense of what it would mean for something to take actions, for something to do something if it doesn't exist in time. It's even hard to make sense of what it would mean for something to have a mind if it didn't exist in time. As far as we can tell, minds are like basically strings of processes that happen. Like a mind isn't a thing, it's a process. So it's hard to say what it would even mean for this thing to have thoughts, or this thing to have desires or wills, if it doesn't have a mind, or if it doesn't exist in time. There's also questions about like inductive reasoning questions, namely that we talk about this idea that generally we can go from the specific to the general if we see enough specifics. This is kind of how we do science in some sense. And when we look around us, the only things that we can ever see that have a mind are things that have bodies. They're attached to bodies, right? Whatever the body might be. If you think that computers have a mind, they're still attached to some physical body. It's just like silicon rather than carbon. But so it seems like we have good reason to think that there are no minds without bodies, right? Of some kind.
There is some thought that consciousness can be everywhere in some arguments.
Well, that's that's a claim, but all of the inductive evidence seems to go against that, right?
I would agree.
So we have good reason to think that minds can't be disconnected from bodies. We have good reason to think that minds cannot exist timelessly. There's deeper questions about, there's kind of ways of countering claims of fine-tuning of design. Like we can talk about all of the things that are clearly not designed in this universe. Like if you go look at all of the kind of amorphous structures that are not particularly organized, just kind of big blobs. Like if you look at most elliptical or ellipsoidal galaxies, these are just big blobs of stars. They don't have like these grand design spirals. And then we can go look at arguments against fine-tuning. Fine-tuning being like this whole like the constants of nature a certain way. There are plenty of arguments against that. Probably the most popular multiverse arguments. But the point is there are so many arguments against that either counter the arguments for or are explicit arguments against the existence of this kind of foundational ultimate God version. That it's just a little bit surprising to me that you haven't heard these.
I'm not entirely for an ultimate God version.
Okay, so then we can talk about like the non-ultimate God version.
Yeah.
The origins of the simulation hypothesis come from a fellow named, what was his name? It starts with a B. Or the popularization. It was by Nick Bostrom. That's who it was. Nick Bostrom's original paper came out 20 years ago or so. He comes up with this idea that says, well, look, if it's possible for us to create a simulation of our own universe, or for us to, he called them ancestor simulations, where like at some point in like 10,000 years, we simulate the exact reality that our ancestors would have experienced to see what they were like. If it's possible that we could simulate a reality like our own, then it is reasonable to conclude that there would be more simulations of realities like our own than there would be base realities. And so we'd therefore come to the conclusion that it's more likely that we are in a simulation because it's possible for us to simulate our own reality. The unfortunate truth of the matter, though, and this is a physics constraint, is that we can't simulate our reality. The laws of physics basically forbid it.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with ruling out simulation theory as well.
And so it seems like that there's not really, it seems like the kind of non-ultimate, the kind of non-omni God version that you're proposing is also not particularly well substantiated. We have good arguments against it. So what's keeping you stuck?
There are plenty of arguments, I'm sure, that could be for it. And I just, from my own perspective, okay, I'm kind of losing my train of thought. Give me a second. The evolution of consciousness over millions of years, if not billions, that has to be more than just a human mind being able to exist. Like there's got to be more and higher and lower. Like
sure,
we already
there can be aliens that have conscious experience. Sure.
Yeah, and I believe that from the fact that we are evolved over that much time, there's got to have been different species that have existed before us, and like minds that have been able to exist, consciousness able to exist. And I'm just arguing that there has, with the design of, well, I say design, but with the science and the laws of science, and having kind of been argued against by AI about why I could have more belief in the idea that there's some sort of design to reality. That's what I argue. Design to reality from a source other than human ability.
Well, look, if we're talking about designs of reality or designed reality, then it's designed either by a non-omni god, which is a simulator, or it's designed by an omni god. And it seems like we've got.
Why can't we have a different?
What are the other options? I mean, like either the omni god is either the designer is omni or it's not. If it's not, then we would just call it a simulator, even if it's not literally using a computer. It would be something that is like somehow, you know, running some sort of creating the world in a particular way. All of the arguments against the simulation apply the exact same way for the arguments against some sort of non-omni creator. They all work the same.
Okay, for the sake of argument, I'll say we could be powered by, like, behind our eyes could be like dark matter that is somehow powering us, that's from stars from light years away. That
What does that have to do with God, though?
No, that would be like how the source of our consciousness is from somewhere else, and that would be some way of being simulated. Or
but what would that have to do?
It wouldn't be a computer, but
what would that have to do with a God existing? You're just talking about like aliens that exist a few 100,000 light years away doing something. That's not God in any sense of the word.
The star could be energy that is just within us, that is part of us, and that, like, I'm just doing it for the sake of argument, but there's definitely tons of things we don't know.
Yeah, there's also tons of stuff that we do know.
Yeah, based on what we do know and how precise science is, like, it's kind of hard not to say there's so many different forces that can be enacted together to create different things, and we can create buildings and crazy shit, like satellites send out stuff out to space. Like, obviously stuff can go to different planets. And
but what does this have to do with a God?
The word God is really tough for me.
It's definitely not a God if it exists within our universe. If it's just made of stuff within our universe, we would call that an alien otherwise.
Or a source of life, maybe, like, I mean, consciousness.
If it originates from within our universe, if it originates from within our universe, then it's either a natural process or there's an alien. Right?
What else would we be able to, like, describe the alien as without calling it an alien? Because it would be better to
the better word to describe it is an alien.
Like
that's the word. Like, just because there's a super intelligent alien that lives on the planet Gleepglorp, and doesn't make that alien a god in any sense of the word.
Okay, how about, like, collective consciousness?
What about it?
Without, like, we're born into a world that already has a ton of other living conscious beings, and the idea that our mind is living in kind of an organism in and of itself. And
why would anybody believe this?
As a higher power?
No, what reason do we have for believing that this is true?
I would, from my own perspective, probably, like, thinking about the Sangha from Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, I think, and mushroom experiences, like ego dissolution, stuff like that, like being part of everyone.
I think that I probably have good reason to think that any experiences that result from psychedelics or psychotropic compounds are probably not trustworthy. So at least personally, I wouldn't put too much stock in, you know, the conclusions that you come to as a result of these compounds.
I wouldn't call them complete conclusions, and I would probably agree with you. Like, I just think that if mushrooms can live underground and there's an entire, like, you know, mycology, like, what is it called? You know what I'm talking about? When there's a huge organism underground, it's entirely made of mushrooms. It's almost like it has its mind and it's part of the forest. Like, it feels like if humans are born into a world where, this is all for the sake of argument, my friend, like, that's a plausible thing too, plausible theory.
But we're not mushrooms. We're not one organism connected by mycelium, right? We are separate organisms that don't depend on one another for nutrients or for, you know, I mean, we indirectly depend on each other, but we're not, like, literally attached to each other.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that Like, it's a cute analogy, but it's
I'm
not really
arguing with you
relevant to like humans.
really around the idea of consciousness, because it feels like it has to be born from something, and
Seems like it's born from
you know,
brains.
evolution and the ability to understand things. I mean, a lot of that, there's like stoned ape theory. Some of it did come from mushrooms too. So
Yeah, I don't know how seriously that's taken in the evolutionary biology community, but look, like it seems like you have a lot of questions about like psychology and neurology and consciousness, and these are all good questions, but I don't see how they get you to God. But that said, it seems like that this is, you know, I would suggest, I don't know how frequently you partake, but I would suggest if you partake frequently, partake less frequently, instead read academic philosophers.
I'm not even like
Fair.
trying to argue that for my own. Like it's honestly, can I tell you the truth?
You can, but I might kick you.
That's totally fine. Well, I would like to believe in a God, but it's almost impossible for me to see myself doing it, and I'm arguing purely for the sake of trying to.
Yep. Okay. That means I'll kick you. You're a nice guy, but I don't like devil's advocates. I don't like it at all. If you don't want to convince me, if you want to convince yourself, this is not the place. Let's talk to Jamie Leanne. So, Jamie Leanne, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Jamie, do you believe in a God?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what God would that be?
So I'm very open-minded to a God. I don't have a specific God. My idea of God is always evolving, so I'm just very open-minded to it.
Okay, but so like, what is the conception of God that you currently have that you believe in?
So my conception of God, well, I guess it would be omnipotent.
Knows everything. No,
Yes.
knows everything. Can do everything that a
Is
God can
everything,
do.
all things.
Is
yes.
everything?
Yes.
Is it me?
Yes.
Is it like a piece of camel dung lying in the desert?
Is
Oh, you're cutting out. Go ahead.
understand it or put it in a box.
Sorry, one more time. You were cutting out.
I said that I believe God is so powerful, all-knowing, that we can't really decipher it or put it into a box. It's something that we'll never be able to comprehend, that science would never be able to explain. That's the God I believe in.
You believe in something that you can't comprehend?
Yes.
What is there to believe in then? If there's nothing about it that you can comprehend, what are you believing in?
Well, because it's nothing that I can explain to you. My relationship with God is eternal. I feel it. I felt his presence. And I was an atheist for years.
What kind? Why were you an atheist?
Go ahead. Well, my whole life growing up, I was never around religion. I was
What part of the
always
world did you
kind
grow up in?
of, oh, United States, Texas,
There's
Republican state.
There's no way in hell you were not around religion. No way in hell.
It was not. In my household, I wasn't.
Did you go to a public school?
I did.
Then you went.
yes.
Then you were around
And
religion.
Well, I mean, I didn't follow religion, if that's what you mean.
No, I was asking if you were
I didn't believe in
around
it.
religion.
Well, I knew of it, yes,
Okay,
but I never
continue.
followed it.
Okay.
I just thought it was hokey.
Sure.
But I have a personal relationship with God, and I'll
Now,
tell
do you
you
think
one of
that
the
Jesus-
things that changed my mind.
Just a question. Do you think that Jesus rose from the dead?
I'm sorry. That I don't know. I can't say that. Like I said, I'm open minded. I'm never going to turn down anything because I don't know.
Okay. So what's
That I know
so
something
you
that I don't.
look? So it sounds like, and here's the issue: if you can't tell me what this God is that you believe in, because you don't know what the God is that you believe in, and
Why-
if the God that
why
you
do you
believe
think
in
there's just
comes
one
about
God?
as a result
That's
of
what I don't
personal
understand.
experience, how could you
Okay.
ever hope to convince me to believe in the God that you believe in when you don't even know what the God that you believe in is?
Well- Can I give you an example?
I suppose it depends what it's an example of. If it's an example of a personal
Are you still
experience, it won't be particularly compelling to me.
Okay, well, just hear me out and listen, because that's what this is about.
Are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me a personal experience?
I'm going to tell you an experience that I had and that somebody told me is what changed my mind when I was an atheist.
Okay, so you're going to tell me what somebody told you that changed your mind. Sure, I'll hear what somebody told you.
Okay, right, just listen to me for a second. Okay. So, have you ever been in a situation where, I don't know, in my case, it was like I was about to get pulled over by the cops. Maybe I had something on me. I don't know. This is a long time ago. But anytime I was in some trouble or I was about to get in trouble, for some reason, I would just start talking to something that wasn't there. I'd say, get me out of this, please. I had never prayed before. I had never tried to reach out to a God. I'd never believed in a God. But innately, deep down inside me, there was something that knew to reach out for something bigger. That was my idea
Did
that
somebody? I thought somebody
within
told you
all of
something.
us, there is a conception of God. Even though you say there's no God, I don't believe that because we still deep down dig for something.
I thought you said that somebody told you something.
After that, I started to look more into it. I prayed for the first time.
Can you hear
I had
me?
no idea what I was doing, but I was in such a desperation in my life with depression, anxiety.
Can you hear me?
I was on point. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I thought that you said that somebody told you something that convinced you to believe in God. I thought you were going to tell me that.
Wait, say that one more time. You cut out.
You said you were going to
Sorry.
tell me what it is that somebody else told you that convinced you to believe in God.
Yes.
So what's the thing that somebody else told you?
Yes,
It sounds like you're telling me about your personal experience, which I'm not interested in. I want to hear what somebody else told you that convinced you.
Listen, I'm just trying to. Okay, listen. What they told me is, have you ever been in a situation where you have been in trouble? Did you ever reach out to something?
So they asked. So they
something
asked you
bigger
a
than
question,
yourself?
and then you said
Yes.
yes, and then they said, "Well, that's
Yes.
God."
No, they said, look into that. What is that?
Okay,
And
I think that people.
it was looking into a higher power.
I think that people, like, we know that there are parts of the brain that are definitely associated with religiosity. And so this is not so surprising that people could sometimes do things that seem religious, that seem like they involve the divine, but that doesn't say anything about whether or not those things are real.
Okay, I'm getting to a point. If you just give me a chance. All your people in your chat are asking you to listen to me, so
Well, I
So-
don't think that they are. I'm looking at the chat.
I'm literally reading it. Here's the thing is like you're never going to be open to a higher power, a God, if you think you are a God, and that's what it seems like you do.
I definitely don't think I am God. I don't
science
believe in a God.
is
So
not
how could I think I
everything.
am God?
Because you've never felt or experienced God, and you're
No.
not going to until you do. And I have
Wait,
felt that.
hold on. I'm not going to experience or believe in God until I experience or believe in God.
Until you experience God.
How am I going to experience God? How do I make that happen? Tell me.
So let me explain my situation because obviously it doesn't happen to a lot of people.
So
I
Jamie,
have met some people that it has.
Jamie, the only reason why I'm cutting you off regarding your personal experience is that personal experiences are as convincing as dreams. They might be very
That makes
compelling
no
to you.
sense.
I'll make my point then. Personal experiences, just like dreams, can be very meaningful to the person who has them, but they're almost always completely meaningless and completely unconvincing to anybody else. So, like, in the same way that
I don't believe in that.
Okay, well, in the same way, I wouldn't care if you wanted to tell me about what dream you had last night. Like, you'd be like, "Oh, it was so cool." I'm like, "Okay, I don't care." I also
But this
don't
isn't
care
a
about
dream. This is my reality.
Please,
It's
please,
a whole different thing. And
my
I'm sure
point
a
is
lot of
I don't-
science
I don't
folks have
care
gotten off the
about your-
experience.
I don't really care about your personal experience that led you to God because I didn't have that experience. So I can't accept that experience as something that happened to me. It won't apply to me. So you got to give me something that I can access rather than just something that happened to you.
Yes, and I just said that. I said, is there any time that you have ever sought for something bigger when you're in
And the
trouble?
answer is no.
Okay, so you've always just had it together. You've never reached out for anything.
I mean, I've reached out to friends and family.
Yeah, and they can't do shit for you, right?
Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. And when they can't, things just suck for a little bit. And sometimes they suck for a long time. And that just happens. It's life.
Okay, well, after I prayed, I had an experience of God coming to me.
Okay, well, I've spoken with a lot of people who have prayed and they haven't had that experience. So what do we make of that?
And I agree. Like, it's weird. I don't understand it, and I won't be able to. I've met some people that have, and a lot of people that haven't.
So can I run you a something to think about, thought experiment, if you will? Suppose that God isn't real. Just, put on your hypothetical atheist hat. Suppose that God isn't real, and suppose that you have 100 people who are all in bad situations. These are situations that are almost guaranteed to turn out badly. Maybe you get some test back from the hospital and they say there's a 99% chance that you have XYZ disease, right? You have 100 people, they get the positive for that test, right? And that test is 99% accurate. Well, that test, if you get a positive on that test, there's a 99% chance that you have the disease, right? Now, let's say all 100 of those people, they pray and they're like, please don't let me have the disease, please don't let me have the disease. And keep in mind, God isn't real in this scenario, in this hypothetical world. Now, of those 100 people, the statistics say one of those people will end up not having the disease, even though the test came back positive, because it's only accurate 99% of the time. 99 of those people, of those 100 people, will end up with the disease and their prayers won't be answered. But the lucky one, the lucky one will think that their prayer was answered, even though God didn't exist. So my question to you is, how do you know that this is a God existing or some sort of divine being existing, rather than you happening to be the lucky one?
Because there was no prayer that was answered. I just felt a presence.
So
and in my mind,
people feel,
20 seconds before I believed in no God, and 20 seconds after that, there was this unfathomable idea that this is actually reality. It is
so are
real,
we not
God
talking about the scenario? Are we not talking about the scenario where you said?
Well, I'll tell you the scenario is because that's life. We're in a falsehood.
Sorry, I don't know why you wouldn't let me finish my question. Are we not talking about the scenario where you said that you were in a bad place, or things were hard, and then you reached out to something, you talked to somebody that wasn't there?
Yes.
Okay, so then that sounds like it's a prayer.
I was reaching out to God. I wasn't sure what I was doing.
It sounds like that's a prayer, not just like a sudden realization that something happened.
Okay, it was after the prayer. That wasn't when that happened.
And what happened as a result? So you just had a good feeling and then the bad thing happened anyway?
There wasn't a bad thing. I was sitting amongst a group of people. Now listen, so I was in a bad place. There wasn't anything worse or anything better that happened after that, okay? The experience was I felt the presence of God, and it felt like an enormous warm hug come over me. And when I felt that, I cried, and I've never experienced that before. I was completely sober. And there is nothing, like, I can't explain to anybody what I experienced, because you just don't get it. Like, you have to feel it. And like I said, like, this is an internal thing for me, and there's nothing that can change my mind or prove me that God doesn't exist after experiencing that.
Okay, look, it seems like this is something that's really important to you, and like maybe it doesn't matter whether or not you can convince me. If this is something that you need for yourself, by all means. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. Let's read some super chats and we'll bring on our next guest. From Grimmy with the $5, if my salvation is conditional, so shall be my worship. No magic, no worship. Ah, there you go. There you go. All right, we have a guest from Discord, Doubting Thomas. Why can't I bring Doubting Thomas? How's it going? You got to unmute yourself.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Doubting Thomas, do you believe in a God?
We could say yes.
Okay.
In the sense, okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask which God.
Given that I only know of, since I was raised Catholic, we can say Catholic.
Okay. Now your name is Doubting Thomas. It sounds like you're doubting.
Oh, it's a.
I know.
In reference to. Okay.
I know. But you know, usually people wouldn't name themselves after a person who was famously doubtful. But maybe they would.
I would. No, it's a good question. I call it in a sense because I look at Thomas that story as like the ultimate. If there's any sort of thing that like remotely resembles a scientist in the New Testament, it would be Thomas trying to stab his finger into Christ. But yes,
sure. So look, I don't believe in God. Why should I?
Okay, so you know we'll convincing you of believing God.
Thomas, one sec. TikTok, what the fuck are you doing? Be chill. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, no problem. So let's I wanted to get like a sort of a survey and then of what your belief is before I can start to convince you.
Sure.
First question. So first question is like, let's think epistemically from absolutely no chance to highly improbable to 50-50. We have no way of knowing, probable to certainty. That's sort of the spectrum that I'm thinking of, if that's fair.
Yeah. So like, as far as my belief in like Christianity, I'm like 99.9% certain that it's false. In terms of just kind of general theism, like kind of classical theism, like a classical conception, let's put it at 99%. And in terms of like deism or some kind of, you know, Platonic stuff, well, yeah, like deism, let's put it at like 98%.
Okay, so yeah, so all right, good. So it's all pretty much at the far end of 98% of you think it's like towards the completely no chance. Got it. So let's begin. So let's begin with ask the same question about a creation of a universe. Was the universe created? But let's be more specific. If the universe, this is of course the Kalam, but we'll just flow through it. The question of first, did the universe, was it created? Where would you put yourself on that spectrum of sorry, not creation. Sorry, no, sorry. Did the universe have a beginning? Sorry, my apologies.
I am completely agnostic on the question.
So you're 50-50 that
maybe
you
not
think
50,
there's no
50, maybe 40-60 or 60-40. It depends on the day, but I don't take a firm stance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's then you're a moving target there. It's hard to put. Then it's hard to move on from that. So then we could then you know. Okay. So we can or maybe I could push you at least in that direction.
Sure.
To begin with.
But keep in mind.
So yeah.
Keep in mind. I think that if the universe did have a first moment, I think it's still compatible with there not existing a god.
That might be the case, but I don't think that's the case, but or probably not. But let's let's try to push that.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's you know so the three pillars that I would say are, and there are probably more, but three pillars that I would say that like put me a little bit more towards the 51% to higher percent that the universe started. So we'll start with, you know, that observations tell us that there was a extraordinarily rare low entropy state in the distant past. Number two
I'll write these down so then we can talk about them in a minute. Go ahead.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, and number two is going to be that how you say tentatively we can put something about the idea that our current knowledge of physics supports the idea that I'm going to just throw out the word BVG theorem, and of course, you know, I know you know what that is, and we'll have to maybe unpack that a bit more. But the idea that BVG theorem seems to suggest more that there was a beginning, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
Number three is that we have how you say, or at the very least, I'm still thinking that an eternal inflation is less likely. We can get into that. Number three is that I would say the fact that we don't see any Boltzmann brains in the universe seems to discourage the idea of an eternal inflation.
Okay, so I'm not an inflationist. I like inflation is a nice idea. I'm not convinced that we have compelling evidence for it yet. I'm not particularly attached to inflation as an idea, whether eternal or otherwise. I think that there are potentially other solutions. I think inflation is just one of the possible solutions for the homogeneity that we see in the universe.
Right.
So I'm like, I mean, even just for the sake of argument, I could grant the third one, that if you have eternal inflation, that it therefore follows that there should be Boltzmann brains. That doesn't necessarily follow, but perhaps that's true. I can just grant that for the sake of argument. By the way, I'm working backwards, just so that we probably the more interesting route. Regarding the BGV theorem, it's interesting to me that two of the three letters in BGV, both Borda and Guth, both think that the universe is eternal.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes, good.
It's also interesting to me that people cite the BGV theorem as if it's a mathematically proven theorem when it's known to have counterexamples. There was a paper that came out a few years ago, one of the authors of the paper is a former professor of mine, who they wrote a paper and they found counterexamples to the BGV theorem in completely classical, completely standard GR spacetimes. And so, like, it's just not a theorem. The proof had at least one hole in it, which is how they didn't get around the statement that, or how they didn't get around these counterexamples. And furthermore, even if the BGV theorem is true, it's a statement about classical spacetimes, and I think that basically every cosmologist alive today doesn't think that the universe was classically evolving when the universe was very, very small. It's not even clear how you can talk about classical spacetime at the scales required during a singularity, if there was such a thing. So I'm just not convinced that the BGV theorem is if it were true, it'd be a nice result about classical differential geometry. It doesn't seem like it's true, nor does it seem like it's relevant for the origins of a universe, because the origins of a universe would involve, if the BGV theorem was true, it would imply a singularity. Most cosmologists don't think there was a singularity because of quantum gravitational effects. So it just seems super unreliable to me. Now the question about low entropy state in the past, that's an interesting question. I think it's possible that there's a low entropy state. I think that we currently have an issue with defining entropy to begin with in our universe. There's not like a well-defined way of defining gravitational entropy.
Absolutely.
There's ways that you can speculate about this. Penrose proposed something called the Weyl conjecture. And he says that, well, the low entropy was captured by the fact that the Weyl tensor was very, very close to zero. And since the universe has been evolving from this near conformally flat, that's what Weyl being zero means, it means it's conformally flat. The universe has evolved since then, and the Weyl tensor has grown, and that captures the entropy of our universe. It's not clear to me how we would even talk about the total entropy of the universe to say that the universe was in a low entropy state in the past. But even if it were, supposing that it were, because, it's perhaps plausible, even if we could talk about the entropy of the universe in some way, it's not clear to me that this is something that is particularly requiring a beginning. For example, if you put an apple in a box for, I don't know, a trillion years with a trillion trillions, it'll rot away and decay. And then if you wait long enough, eventually an apple will reassemble itself. This is called Poincare recurrence. So long as it's energetically allowed, it will happen. And so you can imagine that you have a very, very high entropy state in a confined and, say, a fixed volume for a very, very, very long period of time that occasionally bumps into a low entropy state, and from there you get a universe. So doesn't seem like that we have particularly good reason to think that all of this gets us to a beginning.
Okay. So I want to unpack a little bit of that. So we can, regarding the theorem, because that's probably I'm going to defer quite a bit to your knowledge, but I want to push back a few pressure points there. What I would claim is that there are going to be counterexamples, and there are going to be perhaps ways that you can get around it. But I guess the more refined point that I was going to make is that it puts, at least in the way that it is framed, it does put, and we can talk about, say, ones with classical spacetimes, it puts serious constraints on cosmological models. And I would say, or at least substantial constraints.
What constraints does it put on it if the theorem is false?
If the theorem is false, of course, it puts no constraints.
Right, the theorem is false. As originally expressed, the theorem is false because there are counterexamples.
Are those counterexamples? I guess the question is: are those counterexamples substantially? Are these? I don't want to say. Are these very commonplace counterexamples, or are they
in order
like
for the theorem to be false? And so a theorem is supposed to be, if the hypotheses are true, then it necessarily follows that the conclusion is true. But here there are counterexamples.
Mathematically, yes.
Yeah, there are counterexamples where you have the hypotheses are true, but the conclusion fails. So that means that the theorem as expressed is false.
No, absolutely. And so I guess the point is, if we treat BVG theorem more as a physical constraint than a mathematical constraint, the question becomes
What's the physical
the ones that
constraint
get out.
there?
So the point being that, does it say say, so you have those counterexamples? Do those counterexamples, are those counterexamples ones in which we can say, okay, these are viable, and so so that mathematically you can always come up with very interesting paradoxical or counterexample of things. But then if by other means you can kind of rule out those, I'm not going to be particularly convinced. Even if the theorem is quote unquote false, I can still say, okay, this is still a useful theorem in terms of restricting possible models. Does that kind of make sense? Even if the theorem itself is false.
So I'm on board with what you're saying, but what I think is important here is that unless so the burden is now on the person to show that well, if we impose even more physically reasonable constraints, then it rules out these counterexamples. If that hasn't been done, and as far as I can tell, it hasn't, and perhaps in part because the paper's fairly new. If that hasn't been done, then there's just no reason to think that there's any sort of there's no reason to think that any of the conclusions arrived at by the so-called theorem are true.
Yeah,
that it provides any sort of constraining power.
I mean, fair enough. Given that the paper is fairly new, and I haven't, I'd love to.
I mean, it's from
learn more about it.
2024, I think, or 2023. So it's not like so new, but it is. Sure. It's recent.
Yeah, in the timeline of it being accepted, we're still trying to fight theories from the early 2000s. But yes. In any case, okay, yeah. I mean, fair enough. I'll have to, you'll have to share that. But putting that to the side, so that the burden might be on me to go ahead and do that. I would say though, one more thing I'll just add to this is that. With regards to you saying classical, but most people think that we have only quantum spacetimes or non-classical spacetimes. I would say, the only problem, the question or problem I have with this is that so far as we know, we don't have a viable quantum theory of gravity. So there's no reason to presume that in the first place.
Well, there is reason to presume that classical GR breaks down. We have very good reason to presume that. Singularities are a sign of a classical theory not spitting out physical data, right? And we saw this with electromagnetism in the 1800s. This is a well documented phenomenon that when you have a theory that spits out singularities, then this is probably a case where the theory needs improvement. You've got to do more. You have to add something. You have to quantize it. At least historically, that's how you solve these issues. And we don't even have to look have to look to the beginning of the universe. Black holes exist, right? Black holes exist, and black holes are supposed to be physical things that you could, in principle, go inside and you could poke around at. And so this is a real problem with GR. Most people ignore it because, the singularities at the center of a black hole are, non-accessible to people on the outside. So fine, maybe we don't need to worry about what's going on there. But at the level of foundational behavior of reality, this is something that needs to be addressed, and it can't be addressed classically. I mean, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. There are efforts to address it classically, but these change the behavior of the system so that it's no longer standard classical GR if you want to address it classically. And most physicists take the view that this is probably better understood from some sort of quantum gravity description, despite not knowing what that quantum gravity description would be in its entirety.
Yeah, and fair enough. Although one thing I would say in the classical GR camp would be something along the lines of, or you can semi-classical, whatever you like to put in terms of GR if it's not quantum. In that camp, I would put up the notion that we should not over literalize mathematical models in terms of them being quite those that is truly reality, and it could just as easily be the case that there is some sort of smoothing that goes on at black holes and whatnot, and that we have not fully developed, or perhaps there are viable models.
But whatever that smoothing is, it's not GR, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And furthermore, there are like real questions, right? Like we have if space-time is supposed to be classical, right? Then we have to confront this idea that, like, say you have two electrons. Electrons have mass. You have two electrons, or you have one electron. It's in a superposition of position eigenstates, say. So it's it's in some superposition of states. So what's the gravitational field for that electron? That's a question that, like, I mean, obviously it's very, very small because electrons have very, very little mass and gravity is weak. But that's a question that is in principle like investigable. And so if there's no, like,
Sure.
we need some way of answering that question, and it seems like there's not a way to answer that question without and there's something called stochastic geometry.
So it's SED. Yep,
Yeah,
SED
yeah.
you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. So maybe you can do some sort of like mixed classical quantum dynamics using some sort of stochastic stuff. But
I would even go further than that. I would say, any sort of pilot wave theory in principle resolves it. I would say a multiverse theory of quantum mechanics might resolve it. I think there are viable
multiverse model doesn't resolve it.
Oh, does
it?
it?
Is pilot. Yeah, no, because multiverse the multiverse makes it so much worse, actually.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But pilot wave. Yeah. So the pilot wave might, but then if it's the case that a pilot wave interpretation of quantum mechanics resolves it, then that means that in fact actually the pilot or the underlying particle, which is supposed to be non-observable, like the behavior of the underlying particle is you can just measure where it is at all times without touching it, right? You can just like look at what the gravitational field is. So that would be very weird. And so all I'm saying is that we have very, very compelling, I should say, heuristics for why gravity is reasonably believed to be. Yeah, that gravity is reasonably believed to be, like, we reasonably require a quantum theory of gravity.
We've gotten into an interesting tangent. Although I'll just close. I'll just close make a closing statement on that particular front. Is that because we've worked so hard to find a model and we've been successful, that's why I would say we should revisit that story at least. That's not a great argument, but that we've been working on it for how long? So many great minds have been working on it, and they've been so far unsuccessful. Kind of makes me lean towards skepticism of it. But fair enough.
Well, okay, yeah, sure. Anyway, so this is all to say, it's not clear to me that there are, and by the way, like it's even if you don't have a like a quantum theory of gravity, even semi-classical gravity, which is like that is just quantum field theory on a curved background. Like there's nothing super fancy going on here. Even like a semi-classical gravity, you can get cyclic universes that have entropy reversals. This is like, there's all sorts of different ways that you can make this happen without going into a quantum gravity regime at all. And so it just seems like that there's not really a guarantee that this is indeed that the low entropy state, that the BGV theorem, that these speak to a beginning.
Okay,
and by the way, this is so it sounds like I'm arguing for an eternal past or something. I'm not. What I'm saying is that there are very compelling reasons to think that it's physically consistent for such a thing to be the case. Now, depending on what the evidence will come out to be, we'll either get evidence for an eternal past or we won't, if that evidence is available at all. Meaning we'll either get evidence for a finite past or an eternal past. Though, as far as I'm concerned, those are both live options. But I don't think that we can dismiss an eternal past until we have data that supports it. And I don't think that the arguments involving low entropy or involving the BGV theorem are particularly compelling.
Or Boltzmann braids.
I just don't think that they do it.
Okay, this is fair. This is really fair enough. So that makes even step one, let's say tentatively hard. But although you said 40 to 60%, but
it just depends on the day which one's 40 and which one's 60.
Which way the wind blows, yes.
But just to be clear,
Yep.
I think that it's probably a mistake to try to make, like, okay, so you can like make mathematical statements to come to conclusions, but like physics is an empirical science, right? And so if we're going to make claims about the universe having a first moment, this is an empirical question. So in principle, we shouldn't come to conclusions about this until we have data that supports that, right?
Yeah, well, I would say the way you're framing it is a little bit. I would say I'm not trying to. So in terms of what we mean by making claims, we're talking more on the level of belief, epistemic belief here, not claims. We're not making truth claims of this is absolutely true, because you can never you can never prove anything to be absolutely true.
Truth. I'm just asking for, like, if we're going to make claims about the natural world, which is what we are when we say the universe has a beginning, that's a claim about the natural world. Then we should use our best tools to evaluate those claims. And currently, our best tools say, I don't know. And so it seems like being agnostic on this particular issue is the reasonable thing.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, yeah, no, I would still say, you look at, like, up until maybe like a lot of those evidence that you're talking about are less on the empirical side, I would say, and more on the theoretical modeling side. I would say that we can look at, of course, the evidence that we're seeing that we have at least some level of low entropy state in the past, even if you're not going to the beginning of the universe, but let's say an extraordinarily rare, even just like a few billion years ago past, and you just follow that let's say that curve down to lower and lower. I mean, you could look at the cosmic microwave background. You could look at other evidences, the arrow of time, that and you can look at things like you have these point to something that is not an eternal past. That's but okay. So I would say those are empirical, pushing me in the direction of saying, yeah, it's probably more likely that there's a beginning. I'd said 51 plus. That's where I would put myself.
So, I'm hesitant to say that, like, okay, so I agree that we can wind the clock back and the universe gets smaller and perhaps the entropy in some sense of the word gets lower or something like this. But then for some reason we say, this is the point where we should stop winding the clock back rather than this earlier point or this later point. And the reason we do that is because we run into a singularity, right? We run into a singularity in classical GR and we say, well, the scale factor goes to 0 and the curvatures diverge. And so we say, that's the place to cut it off. But if we're a little bit more careful when we wind the clock back, we pay attention to the matter fields that are present, and we pay attention to, like, electrons and the Higgs boson and all of these lovely things. And we see, well, actually we run into singularities earlier than we thought. We actually run into singularities once you get to, I don't know, roughly the Planck time. That's when renormalizability and all of this stuff starts to fail. And so it seems like that if we follow those instructions, we would say that actually there was no singularity. We run into a problem. There was no space-time singularity. Rather, there was never a moment of time where the size was 0. Rather, there is some sort of other, like, kind of quantum-y singularity happening a little bit before the putative t equals 0 moment, or a little bit after, I suppose, the t equals 0 moment. And it seems like that, and that certainly isn't like, time doesn't need to begin there. Right, the quantum field's diverging doesn't say anything about time, and so it seems like it's an arbitrary choice as to when we're deciding to stop winding the clock back, right? I mean, like, in principle, you could just say, well, okay, if we're allowed to wind the clock back past the quantum singularities, like the quantum field theory singularities, why don't we just wind the clock back past the GR singularities? Just say, okay, well, time keeps going past these curvature invariants, and the scale factor becomes negative, because why not? Right, like
possibly,
but this is a modeling thing again. Keep in mind, the winding the clock back stuff, that is cosmological modeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I would put here that again, I would still, all those examples that you just gave, we are still having a finite beginning of some sort, not an infinite past.
But if that's not if you keep winding the clock back past the t equals 0 mark. Like, why do you have to stop at the,
if you do it indefinitely.
Singularity? Yeah, if we're allowed to wind back past one singularity, why can't we wind back past all of them?
Do we have any empirical evidence that the support that there's good reason to go back to negative infinity? I guess that would be
we don't have any empirical evidence to support going back to 0.
But we just talking about some of the empirical evidences in the past of, like, you're talking about the Higgs, you're talking about or matter in terms of when things come back in terms of singularities. Those are empirical observations.
Right, but those aren't at t equals 0. Those are after t equals 0.
t equals finite.
Yeah. Well, so right. And so, but the point is if you're going to make the claim that we can go back to a gravitational singularity where time begins, because to be clear, the place where the quantum field theory stuff happens, time is still totally well defined in that setting, right? Time is totally well defined, but so if you wind the clock back to where the first singularities appear in the models, time still exists, and in fact, time exists before that. So do you just stop? Do you say, okay, our models stop at t equals 1 Planck time, and time exists before that, but we can't say anything about it because that's where the singularities happen? Because that's not a beginning.
So your problem is, okay, give me a time, and that's what you're trying to get at. And I would say, it is also very possible that our model suggests that there could be multiple times, or there's a cloud of times, perhaps, for example.
What I'm saying is that, and just to clarify, what I'm saying is that there is no empirical there's no empirical evidence that is consistent. Actually, there's no empirical evidence that there's a beginning at all, right? We have models, and those models are based off of current empirical data. Those models, if you wind the clock back a certain amount, you run into singularities at certain points as you keep winding the clock, as you keep plugging in smaller and smaller numbers of t. You run into singularities, right? And so the point is that some of those singularities, if we take it to be that a singularity is when you can't do physics anymore. Once you run into your first singularity, you stop doing physics and you throw up your hands and you say, I don't know. Well, then the first singularity that we run into is not a singularity that happens or that prevents time from existing before it. So it seems like that the best thing that we should do is we should wind we can trust all of our physics up until we get to shortly after t equals 0, and then we throw up our hands and we say, I don't know what's going on here. I think that's probably the reasonable thing to do. I think coming to any other conclusions, to be clear, we have no empirical data about anything that happens before then. Absolutely none.
Fair enough, yeah.
Like all of the empirical data relies on our understanding of quantum field theory functioning, and we know that the quantum field theory stops functioning after t equals 0. So it just seems like that we can't get to a beginning. What we can say is that some of our models get us to a singularity at certain moments of time. What that means is to be determined.
I guess I think we're getting close. Where I'm gonna have okay. So two things I'll just close out on is one is I would say unless we have very good empirical very good models supported by empirical evidence that put us to there's definitely a t minus infinity beginning, then I'm closer to the 51%. I guess I'll have to leave it at that.
It's just a matter of weighing the evidence. I don't take that view. But again, sometimes I hear good arguments for the beginning, and sometimes I hear good arguments for a non-beginning, and so it depends. But even if I were at 51%, I don't think that would make that would be enough for me to be like, yeah, I think that the first premise of the Kalam is true.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Sure.
You'd have to get me to 80 to 80-20 or something for me to be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, fair enough. Yes. It's but you get to you're probably around more circles who have more convincing t minus infinity models, internal inflation models. But
by the way, I'm not pro inflation at all, really. It's just not.
Yep.
I mean, it's a fine idea. Maybe I'm just maybe I'm a rebel, maybe I'm a maverick, but I just am interested in other models. So.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and the in regard to the second, we're not gonna. I can get maybe I'll call back for the time for the second step of the club for every change has a cause, because I think I have some good arguments for that as well. One thing I'll just point out too is even if we accept the Kalam of there being a creating let's say there is a creating entity of sorts, if we could somehow say if I could somehow get you to a creating entity, I'll then sort of tantalize the point that the question then becomes in terms of, okay, does that entity have a mind? One thing that I find very interesting is that what are the solid properties of something having a mind. And one I would say is something of having reflexivity. If you're familiar with what reflexivity is, where you can
aboutness?
Sort of ability to sort of reflect or conceive of oneself in some sort of sense. But you
Well,
can think of it more abstractly than that.
But so I'm a little bit dubious, and we can put this off to a later conversation, but I'm a little bit dubious of that, because it just seems like if we say, having a mind is having the ability to reflect, to have a self-conception, well, now we're just saying is to have a mind, you have to be able to have a conception. And so it seems like we can just do it easier. We could be like, look, a mind is a thing that has mental states, and then we can just talk about what kinds of mental states there are. And I don't know. I think that there's serious issues, and it's hard to put my finger on them, but I think that there are serious issues with talking about a mind that exists timelessly. And the only reason I say that is because the way that we think of minds is it's always in a process. It's always a thing that's happening, not a thing that just exists statically. We talk about thinking. Thinking is a process, it's not just a static phenomenon.
It's a static. Yeah.
And same with desires. Desires are you have desires when there's something you want but you don't have, right? And so that's like a state of affairs that changes, or can change anyway. And so if we're talking about something that can't even in principle change because it's timeless, I'm just not sure what features it would have that it has in common with the features that we typically associate with minds.
Well, I would point out, even if we talk about something like if we were talking about something that's timeless, like a timeless entity of sorts, you could think about something with a mind that does not change in time, but say change in some sort of causal chain that is timeless itself. So from one state of a causal chain to another state of the causal chain that is not time-like, but is some other sort of construction. You could have something like a mind in that causal chain that does change.
It's just not clear to me what a causal chain is without some sort of temporal origin.
And that goes back to the second point of the collab. One last thing before I jump off is what I was getting at with this sort of reflexivity part is, are you familiar with John Wheeler's participatory universe?
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
So this is, I would say, and this is, it becomes like the existential realization of all of decoherence theory, which is, it's quite powerful, or at least the canonical version that we have by Wojciech Zurek and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that it is the idea that I would look into it. We can, and that would be something to discuss.
Universe.
Yeah. The picture you always see is the universe, and then there's an eye looking back on the universe and whatnot. That's sort of the picture, the sort of a cartoon that you see about it.
Sure.
And
I wish that
this
there was
is
something more than just I guess I could go read like an original paper or something, but I wish that there was more.
I could give you I would say Zurich's Physics Today, the 2003 revised edition. Where he has the whole theory. He has a whole section on the existential question of the participatory universe based on observation of decoherence theory.
How do you spell the last name?
Zurek, Zurek. I think he has a Zurek Kibble model and whatnot. He's famous for as well in cosmology.
Oh, sure. Okay. Oh, I guess that he had I'm just like, wait a minute. There's a Physics Today article. Because Physics Today is it's like a popular, but I guess he okay.
A lot of I think you kind of the top, in at least in quantum mechanics, the top scientists end up getting a Physics Today journal. That's not; those aren't. I wouldn't say those aren't those are the popular versions of a collection of solid theory.
Sure. And I'm like, look, I'm generally happy to read Physics Today or like pop science articles as long as they're written by people who are. Yep. Working in the area. All right. Yeah. So that's fair. I'll take a look. Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna let you go and bring on another guest, but thanks for being here, Thomas.
Yeah, this was very productive. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Take care.
Take care.
So all of you guys in the comments who are being horrible to Thomas or just being horrible because Thomas had a stutter or whatever was going on, fucking quit it. It's not the kind of stuff that we want here. I was a really good guest. So quit it, okay? If you want to make fun of someone for stuttering because they're nervous or maybe because they have a stutter, this is not the place for you, okay? From Garain with the $5. I thought this was supposed to be the Convince an Atheist stream, not Ask a Physicist. No, it was a good conversation. I mean, like, it was a physics conversation because a lot of, and this is why I actually like these conversations, especially when they can go well, is a lot of these questions are physics questions and they're worth talking about. You can make fun of people if they're bad people. He's not a bad person. He had good questions. He was well informed on the subject. Like, make fun of people who are bad people. Don't make fun of people who are good people. Wrong with you. And this obviously wasn't everybody, but it was definitely enough people that it was worth pointing out. Like, it's crazy. Gorgeous Joe, how's it going?
How you doing, buddy? I'm good.
I'm doing all right. Gorgeous
Can you
Joe.
hear me?
Yeah, I can. Do you believe in a god?
Yes, absolutely. I do.
Okay. Now, why should I believe in a god?
All right. I've been waiting all about a good 30 minutes for this one.
Hope it's good.
Now, before I get into this this quick conversation, I want to ask you one question as well.
Sure.
Do you believe, as of right now, do you believe that you are in full control of yourself and what you're saying?
In full control? I mean, I'm mostly in control. There are definitely things outside of my control. Like if I just had like a stroke right now, I wouldn't have control of that.
No, not in that manner. I mean, as in you're able to move your fingers, you're able to talk, you're in full control of your breathing, all that good stuff, the physical. Okay.
Sure.
So now to get into my question about me trying to share my God, and maybe you might believe it.
Okay,
so,
yeah, sure, please.
In that manner, are you able to control your heartbeat or your breathing throughout the day, or is that a natural
I mean, like, I can definitely, okay, to an extent, I can control my breathing. I mean, we can all choose to hold our breath or whatever. And to an even lesser extent, but still somewhat possible, you can in some sense control your heart rate by choosing to do activities that will raise your heart rate, or choosing to do activities that will lower your heart rate, and so on. But the heart rate is in principle is autonomous. It's not controlled consciously, and breathing is mostly autonomous.
Okay, good. I'm glad you used that word autonomous. But now I want to say, when you're sleeping, all of those same functions go on, correct?
Yep.
Autonomously, correct?
Yeah, they're autonomous.
Because you have no control over it, right? But yet you are still living, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So with just those simple things in the air, what can you tell me in your mind? Because to me, I'm going to say God controls all that, like basically like an autopilot. He puts me in autopilot, I go to sleep, I start my day the next day. Not guaranteed, but if it is guaranteed, then I'll start my day the next day. Now for you, what is controlling that for you?
I'm pretty sure it's like the cerebellum or the brainstem. I guess it's the medulla. It's the medulla.
It's the whole process.
It's the medulla oblongata, apparently.
Is that's your
part
engine.
of the brain. It's the part of the brain. I guess it's part of the brainstem that controls your heartbeat and breathing.
Your engine, basically, correct?
And also blood pressure. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I would say is the part that's controlling those things.
But what is controlling that? That's what I'm trying to say. Who's driving that? The medulla oblongata.
I don't know what you mean by who. It's an organ.
When I say
and the
who,
organ
as
does
in right
stuff.
now, when I asked you at the beginning, I said, "Do you believe you're in control of yourself and your body?" Right? You said yes with motor functions, correct?
Yeah.
Because you're doing it when you're awake.
Yeah.
Your motor functions.
So me is like
right?
my brain.
Not the medulla oblongata.
The medulla oblongata is part of me.
Oh, okay. So you're controlling your medulla oblongata while you're awake.
No, okay. So
that's where I'm getting.
Okay, so then I can clarify. So when I say I'm in control, this is like a colloquial statement. like we would say that it is the prefrontal cortex that is making all of that is responsible for these kind of complex decision-making processes, and then it sends those messages down further to like what to do with your hands and what to do with your mouth and how to talk and all of these kinds of things. So when I talk about me, I'm talking about like my whole being, my whole like conscious awareness, and the conscious awareness part. The conscious awareness part basically turns off, but there's other stuff in you that happens without that conscious awareness. That conscious awareness
And that's
part
what I'm
turns
trying to
off when
say.
you're-
Who's controlling that? Because right
there's
now,
no
while we're
who.
talking,
These are autonomous functions. These are natural. These are
Okay.
natural body process functions that just happen.
an autonomous function that has forever been there or has been created.
This is evolved.
Okay, but you're using the word evolved, but as I'm saying, prior to it, it has to be created to be evolved, correct?
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Apparently, you're blown out. Sorry. It has to be created to be evolved. No, that doesn't follow.
Okay, so what I mean is, for something to evolve, does it not have to be there? Does it not have to be created or made? A human being has to be made or created.
Evolution is the
to evolve
process
an
by
animal.
which the old things, like old, less evolved, in big air quotes, less evolved features become new features.
And an example of that would be?
An example would be the evolution of the eyes.
Okay,
Like,
so
you can have simpler eyes that evolve into be more complex eyes. The origin of the human eye is from evolution. There wasn't an eye that just
Wouldn't
popped
that-
into
so-
existence.
So we wouldn't consider that similar differences. That would just be an evolution of the eye, or
I don't know what
not
you mean by
like a
similar
disease of the
differences.
eye or anything like that. Correct?
I don't know what you mean by similar differences.
Okay, like you know how somebody, like if I'm born and I have eye issues, that's not an evolved eye. It's a disease of the eye. Correct?
Not a disease either. But look,
Or
if
an
you
abnormal. An abnormal.
So there's typical eyes and then there's non-typical eyes. They still function. Some of them.
So
just
that's
function
what I'm trying to
differently.
say, because you're saying
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be made
Uh-huh.
to evolve. So I just want to make sure
Yeah.
I'm clarifying these things that happen every day. People are different.
Yep.
I'm not saying that they're not evolved or not, but you're saying it's just evolution. I was just confused on that.
So-
Everything will be evolution.
So evolution is responsible for large-scale population features. It's not intrinsically responsible necessarily for individual features that are perhaps different from the population norm.
At large.
Yeah. So like, if you have one person who's nearsighted, and 99% of the rest, this isn't a true statistic, but I'm just giving an example. Suppose you have one person who's nearsighted, and 99% of the rest of the population has typical vision. Then that nearsighted person, that's not an example of evolution. That would be an example of, say, a mutation.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. So you at the beginning, you were saying that it was all just evolution. I said something has to be created or made so it can evolve, like a tree. You start at a seed and it evolves into a tree, correct?
Seeds don't evolve into trees. Seeds grow into trees.
Okay. Maybe I'm using the wrong terminology in that manner then. But the matter of fact was that for me to get you to say about believing in my God, I can't really make you believe. I just can give you instances of
Yeah, you can give
life
me
in
evidence.
general.
I'm hoping that you can give me
I
evidence.
I can give you evidence of life in general, like the sun, the moon, that stuff. You might I don't think you guys have the correct mathematical terms, because you and your friend were just talking about that prior, about the beginning of things, but we do know it's there. It is up there.
Yeah, the sun
You don't
and
know
the
who
moon exist.
created it
Wait, what?
for sure,
Sorry,
because it's a theory or theorem.
Gorgeous Joe, what shape do you think the Earth is?
I believe that it's a half sphere.
Okay. So you think that the part that we walk on is flat. Got it. Okay. Anyway, you were saying, why should I believe in this God?
I'm just saying, the reason why I say that you should not saying that you should believe in, just giving instances. I'm only giving my instances, and
Look,
whatever you
I'm
do
not
with
asking,
it.
this isn't a normative claim that I'm making. I'm just asking, like, look, I like to believe true things. I'm asking you, can you convince me that there are true things, that the God that you believe in is true? If it's true, then I want to believe it.
I can only give my facts, and my facts that may share over to you. I don't know how you may take them, but my facts is that that everything that you consider autonomous, I consider my God.
Okay, so like,
Because my God would be I am, which is all creation.
Okay, so
Some people call him Yahshua, whatever.
Do you believe that a Jewish man 2,000 years ago rose from the dead?
a Jewish man. I believe a creature did rise of all creation. Yes, I believe that he was able to use his creation, which is the host body, which is us, which we do. You know, we're a soul, and then there's the body. He was able to manipulate the body into rising up. People do that with voodoo. I don't know how they do it, but they do that with
so
voodoo.
you think that there was like a guy?
I believe that can happen.
As far as anybody could tell, there was a guy around 2,000 years ago. He was killed, crucified,
murdered
for whatever reason. Maybe we don't.
Maybe just murdered.
Maybe we know why he was murdered. Maybe we don't know why. But regardless, he was murdered. And then that body, a few days later, got up and walked around again. That's your view. Okay. Why should I believe that happened?
Why shouldn't you? I mean, I don't want to give that because that's just back and forth.
That's not like a normal. That's not like a
I know
normal
that's a
thing
normal
that
response
happens.
for me, but in essence is that you don't have to believe that in per se. Like religion, you don't have to follow that to the beat. You know what I mean? Religion, that's black and white text that's written by man. What I'm talking about is real life experiences, as in you're breathing right now, but you're not controlling your blood pressure, your heart rate. You're saying it's medulla oblongata.
Yep.
I get it. No. I'm reiterating what you said. I'm just saying that the things that you consider autonomous, I consider my God. That everything that goes on that's out of my control is my God. Either it's a lesson that I needed to learn, or it's something that I needed to avoid to become a better person. Because in your words of evolution, my words of evolution with my God is to become a perfect being because I'm created after him. He's trying to, I say you can use any type of term.
Why do we need some sort of supernatural anything to explain why, like, your colon pushes poop around, or why, like, your medulla oblongata
why do we need, okay.
These are perfectly natural. These are
that.
perfectly natural, entirely explained biological mechanisms, right?
May I give a counter comment to that?
I would just like you to answer the question. Like, why do we need the supernatural to explain why your colon how your colon pushes poop around?
Because men is curious. Isn't man curious?
Look, the question is not why do we need an explanation at all. The question is why does the explanation have to be supernatural?
Why does it have? Oh, okay. That's just a way of describing it. It doesn't have to be a supernatural way of describing, because a lot of supernatural things that we describe is described in science terms. So it doesn't have to be supernatural.
Okay, so
it doesn't have to be described in biblical terms.
If there's not a supernatural explanation, if it doesn't require a supernatural explanation, then why should I think that there's a supernatural being that we call God?
Okay, say that one more time, because I did have an answer, but I just want to make sure I clarify my answer for you again.
If we don't need a supernatural explanation for how the colon functions,
so we don't need a
or for how the medulla oblongata functions, if we don't need a supernatural explanation for this, why do we need a supernatural being that is the supernatural explanation for those things? Why should we believe that such a thing exists?
Because the reason why, I'm going to say it as in a hive mind response. If I am him, he is me, and I am living the experiences, I technically don't need to explain anything. I'm just living the experience. I'm doing the experiencing for him. A being that's outside of time and space, that has created everything within time and space, that it wants to experience his own. I'm sorry.
I thought we were talking about like something. I thought that your God was your medulla oblongata.
I'm sorry, my God.
I thought that your God was whatever controlled the autonomous things.
No, I said my God. My God. You got to listen to me. When I said my God is the God of all creation.
Oh, okay. So now we believe in like some sort of being that's outside of time and space and all of this stuff. So like,
no. That is my God. That is okay. Even in biblical terms, right? If you want to, I don't want you to think it's supernatural. I'm pulling this out of my butt. I don't want you thinking that. If a being, if in the Bible, we go by the Bible, a being that created the lands, everything was dark. He created everything, every single thing. He cannot live in a place that he created because he is the creator. It's like you have a whole bunch of Legos, right?
Just to be clear,
a world out of Legos.
You can build a house and then live in that house.
I'm just giving a little explanation of my theory.
You can live in it. You can build a house and then live in it, right?
Okay, hold on, sir. What I'm trying to tell you is, if you are a maleficent being, not a human being, the way I was going to create that from maleficent. I'm sorry, I can't even get the word out. An omnipresent being, right? Doing a creation. Now, to make that into our terms, it would be...
Where is he?
To make that into our terms, into our realization, so you can understand that, would be a man you and me, using Legos.
That's fine.
We
but
cannot be
you
in
said
that
he's
Lego
omnipresent.
house.
You said he's omnipresent. Where is he?
He is everywhere. He lives outside of
Sorry.
space and time.
Where is everywhere?
Okay, everywhere is where you're breathing space and time, ether.
Okay, so he's in space.
ground
So,
you're living
so
on.
he's in space then. He's not outside of space if he's everywhere.
Okay, hold on. If you're everywhere, right? You're
Mhm.
enveloped in it, right? If you're a bubble, everything inside the bubble and everything outside the bubble. Omnipresent. He's the full circle.
So
Okay.
is he in space or
Where
is
he
he,
moves,
is he
you
not
move.
in space?
You're saying space in terms, okay.
Of,
You're,
like,
you're trying to use
places.
terms to make it smaller. Try to think bigger than space.
I don't think
Think
that
bigger
there's
than that.
I don't think that there's anything outside
Oh,
of space.
see, that's the problem.
So
That's,
why
and
should
that's
I?
what I'm trying to tell you.
Why
That's
should
where
I?
I am.
Why should
I'm
I?
outside of where your thought is in space.
That's cool.
I'm
Why should
outside
I?
of
Why
that.
should
need
I
you to
think
get
that
there.
there's anything that is outside of space? Why should I think that even makes sense to talk
Because
about?
if you're gonna, okay, and the reason why you should think that is if you want to understand God in a basic level, you have to think beyond man terms. If you're using man terms, you'll never understand something that created man.
Okay, so you're not understanding my objection here, and I can clarify. My
Okay, go ahead.
objection here is merely people say things like outside of space, like it's the same thing as outside of a box or outside of a house. These are and we say these because we think of space as like a box that has all of us in it. But space is all of the possible places things can be. So how can something
Now
be
you
in a
understand
place?
that's
Please,
God.
why
right?
are
What
you
just
cutting me off in the
said
middle
is
of my
God.
sentence? Why are you cutting me off in the middle of my sentence?
No, I just want to throw that in there.
Okay,
That's
well
all.
then don't cut me
Go
off and let me finish. What does it even mean? How could it even be possible for something to be somewhere that is not included in all of the places that things can be? It's nonsense. Space is all of the places things can be. So if something is not in one of those places, then it's nowhere. It doesn't exist. If it's somewhere else, then that's one of the possible places that things can be, and hence it's part of space.
All right. And that's you using what? The terminology they're using and the thinking processes that you're using are what? Something you learned, correct?
They are words.
No. You learned the words though, correct? You weren't born with these words.
Obviously,
you learned these words,
obviously
correct?
people learn words.
And that look, I'm not trying to be a smart behind or anything like that. I just want you to try to see. It's almost like how can I say? Yeah, it's basically it's like I'm using religion against a scientist, and it's like it's a give and take because you're gonna try to use terms that you learned, and I'm trying to say God is
I'm sorry.
beyond
Are
terms.
you using terms that you learned, or did you come into this world with all
I'm
of the
trying
knowledge
to
of language?
explain with the terms that I learned God. Yes, I'm trying to explain the terms that I learned with God, but it's not too many that match because, like I said, He is everywhere and everything, and also living outside of time and space. It may sound like
sounds
it's
contradictory
impossible,
is what it
but
sounds like.
What He make. Listen, I didn't finish. Remember, you said you didn't want me to cut you off. I didn't cut you off.
Yes, you did.
cut me off.
Yes, you did. You
So-
cut me off twice.
And I apologize. And then I shut the heck up and I let you talk. Right?
Go ahead.
That's my bad, and I'm just asking for the same, that's all. But what I'm trying to say is that using the terms to explain something that's impossible to make it possible is what science does. Scientists try to find out something that they don't know and give it some type of theory or theorem, which is not actual fact, but it's the best thing that they can use to explain gravity or any other thing that physics or stuff like that, correct? I'm just trying to do the same thing in the opposite direction to explain the impossible, which is the person or the being or the entity or the omnipresent that is everywhere and everything, experiencing everything while living outside of time and space.
I mean, you're just affirming a true.
I
You're
know
just
that's
affirming a
wild,
contradiction,
and
right?
I know that it may not line up with what you're thinking, but that's what it is.
Well, no, you're just affirming a contradiction. On the one hand, you're saying that it's outside of space, meaning that it's not in space. On the other hand, you're saying that it's everywhere in space, which means that it is in space. So it's both in space and not in space. It can't be both. That's just an affirmed contradiction.
No. You didn't catch what I was saying prior. You're not linking the two now. What I'm saying is we are what's in space. We're the ones that me and you, we're here in time and space because we have to live by the guidelines of time and space, matter, all of that. We have to live by these restraints. He does not. So he's using us to witness everything going on in his creation. These trucks, these gasoline prices, us complaining, us loving weather, us going to the beach. We experience that for him. So when we die, we bring that experience back to source, which he's source and then you either come back, you don't come back, or you chilling. I don't know. I didn't get to that part yet.
This seems like it seems incoherent.
It is.
Okay. I don't want to believe incoherent things, so
and that's
like
okay.
I'm not going
that
to
is all right,
because I think
you have the
believing
right for that.
incoherent things is probably a way that you like. It's probably not a reliable way of coming to conclusions about the world.
I mean, hey.
But man, if you want to believe
if
you want to believe incoherent things, like you want to believe that like the Earth is flat, you want to believe that there's a God that exists outside of space but is omnipresent, by all means, it's just not going to do much for me.
And that's okay. That's why I want to make sure we understood that at the beginning. And I just love listening to your stories, man. Keep going, man. Keep going with this. I love it.
All right, thanks for being here, Gorgeous Joe. All right, let's read some super chats. From Grimmy with the $5, your inability to control your bodily functions are a prime example of the lack of true free will. That's a fair point. It's a fair evaluation. Grimlock also sent $10 on Cash App, which is a thing that you can do, by the way, for a promotion for my hydration. W Grimlock, as always. Now, if you guys don't know, I'm going on vacation in a few weeks. Or not in a few weeks. In a few weeks, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks tomorrow, so I won't be around after today. However, there are still ways, even if I'm not live, there's still ways to support me. If you go to my website, which has detailed descriptions of my research and of the science communication efforts and the debate efforts that I do. If you go to my website, there's like a little thing at the bottom right that will say like, there's like Patreon and there's like buy me a coffee. If you want to buy me Italian coffee, I will be in Italy. So like if you want to send that, that will very much be appreciated. These kinds of things. So if you want to support me, there are ways to do that even if I'm not live streaming. Of course, if you just watch my old videos, that supports me too. So until then, until the live is over and I'm gone for 2 weeks, let's bring up another guest. Why not go live in Italy? I will be on a ship. I'm going to be in Italy for a few days, then I'm going to be in Greece for a few days, then I'm going to be in Turkey for a few days, then I'm going to be in Italy again for a few days. All right, let's bring up Noetic Cosmos. I feel like I've spoken with Noetic Cosmos before, but I don't remember.
No, we haven't.
We haven't?
I've got
Okay.
a good feeling.
It might just be the name seems similar to something else. So, Noetic Cosmos, do you believe in God?
Yes, and I believe I'm about to test a high-performance sports car, so I've got that wee kind of adrenaline feeling because I've seen how you perform.
Okay.
You're quick-witted,
Why should I believe in a
fast.
God?
So, should I say the categories of my beliefs so that we know the
Yeah, if you want
contention
to tell me what God it is that you believe in, that would be good.
So no personal God like a religious type, right? It's
Sure.
kind of like the last guy, but a lot deeper, and I'll try my best to stay coherent.
I would appreciate
So
that.
so the categories, it takes stuff from quite a few, like about 4 or 5 different categories. So non-dualism, because I don't believe there's a God outside of time and space. Now you might say, well, what's different if it's just natural? I get that, right? And I will address that. Next is most of analytical idealism, although I wouldn't say I'm a strict anti-materialist, because there are underlying quantum fields that are real things that can be measured. And I believe that the everything in existence is basically a reconfiguration from within those fields that never truly breaks. Next is
Seems like
cosmopsychism.
Seems like I'm still not sure where we're getting the God claim.
I know it's quite big. I think. Well, I'll try to condense it as much as possible. I've thought about how I'll try and condense it, right? So the next one is cosmopsychism, where I believe the universe is fundamentally conscious. Just a quick one is that absolutely everything in existence is made of the quantum fields that we've at least discovered thus far, and that there is never a break in those quantum fields. They're basically continuous strings or frequencies or oscillations of energy that reconfigure into the complex forms that we can see, like you and I, right? So the reason I think the universe is underlying consciousness, at least at the local level, is because since there is no break in those fields, and it's essentially a bunch of oscillating frequencies of varying degrees of complexity that all have their own responsibilities and come together in is basically a unified quantum field that never breaks, then as a reconfiguration of the field, I am the universe taking conscious form.
Okay. Now, what does this have to do with what does this have to do with the divine?
So, if you're talking about supernatural deity, I don't think there's a requirement for it to be supernatural, but I can address the points of how it's a creator, how it's conscious.
Let me just give
how
you
it's
a
got free will,
definition.
how it can do all the other things of God.
Let me just give you a definition of what I mean by God. I mean some sort of entity that is, perhaps the word that's often used is personal, meaning it has a mind of some kind.
Yep.
It is responsible for being the foundation of the universe, or perhaps the origin of the universe, or the creation of the universe, whatever it might be.
Too, if you want.
And it's also capable of existing without the universe. It is independent of the universe. It doesn't depend on the universe for its existence.
Well, then we may as well talk about unicorns and flying spaghetti monsters, but I do believe a God exists in a different way from.
If it sounds like your view is consistent with atheism, then, in the way that I'm thinking of it.
No, because I believe that the universe is fundamentally conscious. And
that's fine. That's consistent with atheism.
You think so?
Yeah. It's just like analytic idealism. You can be an analytic idealist and be an atheist.
No, I would say that because it meets every definition apart from the unicorn part, basically. It's God.
Well, yeah, the unicorn part, the unicorn part, as you define it, is like intrinsic to it being a god.
No, that's just
that's how the word is used.
Sticking with religion.
That's how the word is used by people. Like if you want to, if you're just an analytic idealist,
general consensus.
Okay, well, I'm just using words the way that they're used by people.
I promise you, I'm deeper than that.
Well, I don't care. You're an analytic idealist. I'm not an analytic idealist, but that's not the conversation. The conversation is about a thing that is supernatural, right? You can't be a naturalist and also believe in God. These things are in direct conflict, right? So that was not a good use of time. You can even be a panpsychist and still not believe in God. You can be an atheist panpsychist. No, I dropped him. I dropped him because there wasn't a conversation to be had there. Like we weren't disagreeing on the subject matter. All right, I think, have I spoken with Harley Quinn before? Let me just double check something. Because I have some guests that in Discord that I'd like to bring in, but I wanted to make sure that I had spoken. Have I spoken with Harley? Okay, I haven't spoken with Harley Quinn, so let's bring on Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn, you are now on the live stream. You gotta unmute yourself though.
Hey there.
Harley, how's it going?
Hi there.
Harley, do you believe in a god?
Well, actually, I am. Actually, I am an atheist, but sorry for what. Sorry for my English, but
I'm trying
it's not my.
Are you Finnish?
My main language. So.
Are you Finnish or Estonian?
What I want.
Are you from Finland or Estonia?
No, I'm from Italy.
Italy, okay. Sorry, I'm bad with accents. But look, Harley, since we are in agreement on whether or not a god exists, I gotta let you go.
No.
Let's bring up Mark. I'm so bad with accents. I can go visit him. Mark, you're on the live. Mark?
Can you hear me?
I can. Howdy.
Hello.
Mark, do you believe in God?
Yeah, sure.
And which god would that be?
I believe in Yahweh, the god of the Jews.
Okay, and Mark, how old are you?
17.
Unfortunately, you gotta be 18 plus to be here. Sorry about that, bud. All right, let's bring up a guest from TikTok. Let's bring up Zid. Zid, how's it going? Oh, he's not here yet. Yeah. Howdy.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Zid, do you believe in a god?
Yeah.
All right, which god would that be?
Of Islam. But I have a quick question.
Sure.
See, there's like this atheist argument.
Wait, hold on. Like, Zid, how old are you?
18.
Okay, and what year were you born?
2007.
Okay, that's fine. So go ahead.
So there's this atheist argument, and it's called Bayesian reasoning, and they do this thing where they have these like super low priors for theism. Do you think that argument is successful?
I think that if you have low priors for theism, then of course it's successful.
Do you think that it could be reversed to favor theism?
If you have low priors for naturalism, sure.
Because when I see atheists use it, they tend to like split theism into multiple independent categories. Like, for example, material, immaterial, causally efficacious, and stuff like that.
Look, so the low,
think-
like the simplest version of the low priors argument is just that if you have sufficiently low priors for some position, it doesn't matter how much evidence, I mean, the amount of evidence that you need to come to that conclusion is overwhelming. And like that's all the low priors argument really is. I mean, there's another version, or there's more aspects to the low priors argument, namely that like bare theism is, if you have low priors for bare theism, then you'll have even lower priors for Christianity and so on and so forth, but or for Islam or whatever it is. But like, I mean, that's what it boils down to. Now, I mean, sure, like an argument is only as convincing as the premises are, and if one of the initial premises for the reversal of the low priors argument is that you have a low priors for for supernatural, or you have low priors for naturalism, or you have high priors for supernaturalism, then like, yeah, it'll work both ways. I just won't accept that first premise because I don't have high priors for supernaturalism.
Right. So you think it can actually turn out to favor theism as well?
It just depends on what your initial, like of course it can. Obviously, if you have low priors for naturalism, then yeah, of course you're gonna be convinced by a low priors argument for theism.
No, sorry. I meant the priors itself. Do you think that it can be reversed to favor theism as a higher prior?
Look, so priors are not argued for. Priors they're your incoming starting. They're in some sense like your starting assumptions, right? Your starting views. So like if you can change them by data perhaps, or perhaps by an argument, and then you can have those posteriors, which come from your priors and then are modified. You can have those posteriors be priors for some other argument, for some other position, but like it just depends on what your what your starting credences are. And like if you can convince somebody to change their starting credences so that their starting credences are somewhere else, fine. I think that generally personal experiences are really good at doing that, but I don't know how you're going to actually reverse it for somebody who already has low priors for for theism.
All right, thanks. That's all.
Okay, thanks for being here. All right, let's talk to Tom. Share your faith. Tom, share your faith.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, of course. Tom, do you believe in a god?
Yeah, I really. Yeah, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Do you believe in a god?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I'm just going to take a wild guess that it's Shiva?
No, Christianity.
Rats. I'll get it right sometime.
The Bible.
Okay, so why should I believe that the God of Christianity is real?
Well, one thing I would have to say is the reason I think you there's evidence is because of yourself. I listen to you a lot. I mean, I listen to you talking about flat Earth and round Earth, and on and all your different programs. I see a very intellectual person that is super smart. I mean, I
appreciate the glazing.
Yeah, and you're really on top of your game. I mean, you can really produce your point of view very, very delicately, but very clearly and very powerfully and very, you really make a good case, basically. So
I appreciate
my case would be.
So what's the case? Yeah, what's the case?
That's an honest observation. So my case would be you yourself. When I look at TikTok and the program and how it worked, I know there's an intelligent designer because TikTok, with the technology of being able to talk, communicate, see your expressions on your face, you yourself are much more supreme being as far as knowledge than a TikTok program or
sure, yeah, internet. More my brain is probably more sophisticated than the software that is TikTok. Yeah. I agree with that. That's probably true about everybody, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody has, but you use your brain in a very intellectual appropriate way.
If you
When it
keep
comes
glazing me, I'm going to become a donut. So let's let's turn that down.
Well, okay, I'll turn it down, but you do have a lot of views and you do have a lot of followers. So, I mean, credit is actually true. But the point being is we all have faith in something. You have faith in time. You know,
I don't know what
your
that
faith-
means.
Okay, for example, your brain, your knowledge, your intellectual ability is because of the way you reason as far as evolution. You know, basically evolution is your way of being, you know, like I would say from a Christian point of view that we are created by God, obviously, that loves us, and he created us amazing. I mean, the Bible tells us, and I'm not going to go on to the Bible thing, but I'm just going to say he says in the Bible that we're fearfully and wonderfully made.
Can you
You're a
elaborate a little
wonderful
bit more
example
about what
of
you
that.
mean by I have faith in time? I have no idea what that means.
Well, yeah. So in other words, evolution has a religion. It's called faith in time. You know, over
Evolution has
billions
a
of
religion?
years.
What do you think a religion is?
A faith, a belief system.
So, do you think that all beliefs are faiths?
Well, it's a belief in something. So, for example,
Look, I believe that my wife is in the next room over, but that's not faith.
Well, you believe in that you have a wife, don't you?
Yes, and that's not faith either.
Okay, faith is belief in something.
No, that's not
So
what
in
faith
other
is.
words-
Faith is belief. I mean, we can even go look in the Bible. The Bible tells us what faith is. It's belief in things unseen.
Correct.
Right.
So, I
So
have
like
faith in a
like
God.
it's
That's
not the case that my wife is unseen. She's in the next room over. I can go see her right now. So that's not faith.
Okay, so your interpretation of faith is something that is not seen that you would take.
I mean,
out
that's
of
what the
book,
Bible
right?
says, right?
Well, yeah, in the Hebrews it says that.
Yeah.
Faith
So
is
like,
the
why are
evidence
so like that's the
of things
definition.
not
Like, if we're
seen.
going to talk about faith, why don't we use the definition that we both agree on?
Well, the reason I say that is because neither one of us believe that, for example, time. Okay. What would you say in like your creation of your body over billions of years?
My body was
So-
created over, well, as it currently is, over 32
Well,
years.
Right, but I mean, evolution shows a process. So, for
Yeah.
example, if what would you say you believe in more of, or, and I'm not going to use the word faith, but what do you believe in? Say if, let me give you two examples. Say you have a junkyard with a bunch of scrap, and you've probably heard this illustration before.
And then a
How
tornado
many-
comes through, and how many tornadoes to assemble that into a 747, right?
Well, yeah, but I twist it around a little bit. I say out of that tornado comes two airplanes,
Mhm.
and out of those two airplanes, all of a sudden there's one rudder that's missing on one of them, and all of a sudden drones start coming out of this other airplane. It doesn't
Mhm.
have the rudder.
Yeah, sure.
Now that's kind of a silly story. You would agree with me that all of a sudden drones are being.
Yeah, fortunately,
created
that's not
from
particularly
that.
analogous to evolution.
Well, see, the point being is faith, or in your situation, belief. You believe that, you know, we as a husband and wife and having babies is a matter of time because we evolved.
Yeah,
so basically,
we have
you
evidence that we
believe-
evolved. So it's not
you
a faith.
believe-
It's an evidence-based
It's-
belief, which is
Yeah,
just
so you
called
would believe the same
the
thing.
kind of thing that we
and-
do to come to
yeah.
conclusions about the
So,
world. We form beliefs based off
on
of
a-
evidence.
Right. So on a lesser scale, you would believe that drones would fly out of that plane over time.
No,
with
because we
little
don't have
baby
evidence of
drones
that.
because- Okay, but I'm saying a human baby is more complex than drones.
Right,
that
but we have
come out.
evidence of human evolution. We don't have evidence of, aircraft evolution.
Well, we have no evidence of major transitions, only minor transition.
What do
Big
you think a
dog, little
major
dog.
transition is? Sorry? Can you give me an
Well,
example
you
of
know,
what,
like
what you think a
banana.
major transition would be?
Like a banana would turn into, an elephant, or a
Do you
rock
think
would
that that's a
turn into
claim made
amoeba.
by those who take evolution seriously, that they think that
Yeah.
banana turns into an elephant?
Well, it's a belief system. That's
That's
you
not the
all
belief system of people who believe in evolution. Nobody,
Yeah,
no
because
single
time did
person
that.
who's ever taken evolution seriously has believed that a banana at some point turned into an elephant.
Well, they believe a rock has exploded and then turned into all this.
That's no,
Same
it's a
thing.
straw man. It's not an accurate representation of the belief system, right?
Well, they use time.
It just
Yeah,
seems
but-
like that you don't know what it is you are accusing me of. So rather than accusing me of believing things that you think I believe, which are straw mans, you could just ask me what I think is the case.
Okay, so basically, You have, and you're going to be a powerhouse one day when you come to understand the Bible and Christ and you accept him and receive him. What is your understanding about Christianity? I mean, what is so hard to understand about that?
It's very easy to understand. It's a early Iron Age myth, or perhaps late Iron Age myth. A man who existed in a world, at least at the time, the people existed in a world where supernatural events were pretty ordinary. There were wizards and sorcerers and magic and miracles. These were pretty ordinary things. And one of the men rose from the dead. And he established a following obviously before rising from the dead. He established a following. Then he was, killed for whatever reason. We could argue about that, but it's probably not worth it. He was killed for whatever reason, and then miraculously he rose from the dead. And that spun off into a whole new branch of Judaism that's now called Christianity.
Which is a large group of people on this planet.
It is.
So with that percentage of people, and people have lives that have been transformed by that faith, by their belief in that, a lot of good, obviously, because mankind is sinful. We all have flaws, but an overall love story of what the Bible says actually makes pretty clear sense that it's a gift. Eternal life is a gift.
Well, that's the claim. I don't think that eternal life exists. And I'm wondering why I should think it, like what evidence is there for that I should appeal to think that it exists?
Well, for me personally, I've got, first of all, I would say at three things. One is my self-existence. I look at my creator and I look at my fingerprints on my hand. I look at, kind of like you, and I look at my body, how it's intriguingly designed to where I could actually have children and grandchildren. That would be my number one go-to, is that
what's the connection between our bodies are complicated things to therefore a God exists? How does that work? What's the connection?
Because we're a miracle, and if we were just
people say that like birth is a miracle, but it's not literally a miracle. We understand how it works. It's not like supernatural, right?
Yeah, it takes two people. And you can't
so like it's pretty straightforward. Like we understand how human reproduction works. There's nothing miraculous here. It's entirely natural.
Well, I think it's an intelligent designer who has done an incredible
I understand
thing.
that. My question is what is it about humans being complicated that leads you to the conclusion that a God exists?
Well, number one is our amazing design. Second thing would be that he had a
You're just reasserting the thing, right? So you said our amazing design. I'm asking, what is it about the intricacy of the human body that leads you to think that there's a God?
Because there's no
I agree it's intricate.
Okay, well, yeah, there's no human being that could do something like this.
Human beings do it. So nobody's claiming that there's a human that designed humans. That's not the claim.
Okay, it's like a computer. I could look at a computer and say there's an intelligent designer. The designer is not in the computer. The designer is outside the computer.
So is it your claim that if you have some kind of complicated thing, therefore there must be something more complicated that designed it?
Well, the designer is obviously God. And
sorry, can you answer my question?
Yeah.
So if you have something complicated, does it therefore follow that there's something more complicated that designed it?
I wouldn't say complicated. I would say
intricate. Something. If you have something intricate, there's something more intricate that designed it.
I have faith in a God that's supreme, all knowledgeable, all powerful. Omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent.
Yeah. So it follows then that. So is it your view that God is more intricate than we are?
Absolutely, because
if that's the case, then under your view, if I'm understanding you properly, under your view, God is an intricate being, and therefore God must have been designed.
Well, yeah, he says,
so God was designed? So there's something more intricate than God that designed God?
Yeah, where did God come from? That's a great question.
And it must be something more intricate than God, right?
When I get to heaven, when you get to heaven to find out where you're going,
so you believe that God was created, right?
Yeah, God has a creation called I Am.
No. God didn't exist, and then something created God, right?
Well, that's a great point.
Is that your view?
And, I've often thought about that. I believe what the Bible says. God's given a certain amount of knowledge, and that's it. I don't know where God was created. All I know is that He said, "I am." So He's always been there. That's okay. Basically.
So you do believe. So you do believe that. I mean, to be consistent, you have to believe that God was created as well, and then the thing that created God was also created, and the thing that created that thing was also created, right? And there's just an infinite chain of creators that are more and more complicated, more and more intricate. than the ones that they create.
Well, I'll even agree and add to your point. You know, if God is so amazing to design us, he would have to be someone who designed him would have to even be more creative.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and
I
it just
get
has to go all the way back, right?
Yeah. How many? Like we have.
There's just an infinite series of gods that make smaller gods. Your God is just the bottom. The God that you believe in is just the bottom God.
You would assume that in your mind, but in reality, it could be one God.
Well, so an intricate thing can't create itself.
Well, just like us.
What do you mean an intricate thing? What do you mean an intricate thing can create itself? It's have you heard about junkyards? What if a tornado went through a junkyard and out popped two airplanes, and one of them had a rudder and the other one spewed drones? That's unlikely.
But according to atheism, according to evolutionists, they would say that would happen eventually because time is their God. Because,
no, that's so look, the position of the atheist. So you're strawmanning me right now, by the way. So
no, an explosion happened.
Do you want me to tell you what my position is, or do you just want to assume it incorrectly?
Okay, tell me your position.
My position is that if there's evidence for a thing, then we have reason to believe in the thing. So there's evidence for human evolution, so we have reason to believe in human evolution. There's not evidence for two airplanes spontaneously forming from a tornado in a junkyard, so there's not good reason to think that that's a thing that happens or can happen.
So you've observed a banana turning into an elephant.
That's not my claim. That's not my belief system.
Okay,
that's not part of evolution.
Transitions. Bones don't tell you anything about transitions.
What do you mean bones don't? Transitions don't happen while the thing is alive. Transitions happen over generations.
Yeah, that's your God, time, time. That's why I keep saying.
Oh my God.
You have a belief.
You're right. System. You're right. I believe if there is a God, he is evil for punishing me for this conversation. For punishing me with this conversation. I mean, like, look. Have you studied evolution at all?
Well, you know,
because it just sounds like you don't actually know what the evolutionary claim is.
Okay, yeah, and they teach it in school. You know what they teach in school? You know how a big bang exploded over billions of years. It actually turned into us. It's the short version. So basically,
the Big Bang wasn't the explosion. That's the first thing they teach you in school.
Yes, that's
it wasn't.
What they teach
it wasn't an explosion. And it wasn't a rock.
Great, and go on billions of years was a rock that, okay, not even a rock. It could be a pin, the size of a pin that just exploded.
The Big Bang wasn't an object that exploded. It's like you're taking all of the bad apologetics from like the 1980s and regurgitating them 40 years later.
No, but that's
not what the Big Bang is.
That's more of a faith in Christianity.
We have evidence for it. It's not a faith at all. It's belief in the things seen and not things unseen.
Your faith.
We can literally see the residue left over from the Big Bang. It's like we can see the smoke left over after the gun fired.
Well, I mean, your faith is more than my faith, obviously.
Can you give me an example of something that I believe in that I don't have evidence for?
You have nothing that blew up into everything.
Can you give me an example of something that I believe that I don't have evidence for?
You don't have evidence over where creation started. So
I don't believe that creation started.
Well,
I don't have beliefs about creation starting.
Okay, so your creation started at the Big Bang, right?
No, I don't believe that.
So how do you believe that the evolutionary process started?
Well, evolution is a process that started like 3 to 4 billion years ago on Earth. It's not a thing that happened. Like the Big Bang's not related to that. So do you want to ask about the Big Bang or do you want to ask about evolution?
No, there's different stages of evolution.
No, it's just not called evolution.
Okay, what do you believe where it all started then?
Well, I don't know if the universe had a start. I'm pretty agnostic about that.
So you'd think we were just, boom, here, an Earth?
No, it's not what I think. You can ask me what I think.
Well, what do you think?
Well, I'm not sure if there was a first moment of time or if there wasn't a first moment of time. Perhaps perhaps every moment of time has a moment before it, meaning that perhaps the universe goes back forever, or perhaps there was a first moment of time and there's just no time before that. I don't know. I'm hoping that we will know eventually, but I don't think that anybody knows at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I don't hold the view, and nobody holds the view, that the Big Bang is like some object exploding It's not what the Big Bang is. The Big Bang is a rapid expansion of the universe from a small state of affairs, small region, to a large region. There's not like a single object in the universe that explodes. It's the universe as a whole was smaller, and now it's bigger.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think
you
that
believe
I don't
that.
think that bananas turned into elephants. I think that bananas and elephants have a common ancestor, probably billions of years ago, and they diverged billions of years ago. They share a great with a million greats grandpappy.
And that's why I say you have a faith.
No,
You
these
have a
are all
belief
things with
system.
evidence. I can provide you the evidence for all
No,
of these
you
claims.
don't have anything billions of years ago. You
Sure
got
we
a
do.
faith
We have
billions.
plenty of evidence
You've
for
got
billions of years ago.
Minor
Absolutely.
transitions. You got minor transitions that we can see and observe today.
So hold
But
on.
to
Why are
put
we
bones
talking about
together-
transitions when you were just a second ago talking about not having evidence for billions of years ago? Because we have plenty of evidence for billions of years ago. I can give you plenty of
Like
evidence for that. Zircon crystals that contain uranium and lead.
How can you prove it?
You can take a zircon crystal and you can put it in a machine called a mass spectrometer, and then you can measure the amount of zircon, the amount of lead in it. You can measure the amount of uranium in it. That's just observable that zircon crystals have both of these things in them.
Yeah, and a meter pops out and says it's 1 billion years old.
No, then you do a calculation, because we know stuff about how uranium behaves. Like uranium is radioactive, so it decays over time. And so based off of how much uranium there is and based off of how much lead there is, you can conclude that the uranium decayed into the lead because of the chemistry of zircon. The lead can't get in any other way. And so the lead must have come from the uranium, and we can figure out how long it took for that lead to form from the uranium. That's
right,
evidence. That's
what-
science.
That's a flaw in the system.
What's the flaw?
Because you can't prove that it went back that far.
Nobody's
because
talking about proof. We're
you
talking about
don't know
evidence.
Like, for example,
We're not talking about proof. We're talking about evidence.
Okay, we're not. You can't use that as evidence because
You can absolutely use it as evidence, but go ahead.
God could create the heaven and the earth in 7 days, and He could use time involved in that. So when He
I have no idea what
created-
that means. What do you mean use time involved in that? Can you explain?
So when He had created Adam and Eve, and there was trees there, He could have put trees that are 1,000 years old. He could have,
But
put
they wouldn't be
Zarkon,
1,000 years
whatever.
old, right? They would
He
only
could-
be a
he
day
could-
old.
He could put uranium with age built in it. There's nothing.
Yeah, but the thing is there's no evidence for this claim. We do have evidence for the claim that uranium undergoes radioactive decay and it turns into lead over time. We have evidence for that. You don't have any evidence that God made the world with apparent age. There's no evidence for that. So why would I believe it?
Well, I mean, again, because I go back to looking at what the Bible says, and
I know,
it's clear.
but you're making the assertion that I have more faith than you, that I don't have any evidence. But I just told you about the evidence. This is like this is well established scientific evidence. Like it exists. Sorry.
There's no evidence that you could go back and point to. This was made 1 billion years ago.
Sure, I can. I just told you about it.
I know you told me about it, but
That's
your
absolutely
faith
it's evidence.
is in that.
Where's the faith?
Your faith.
Where's the faith?
Your belief in that equation is obviously
We have
flawed.
we have evidence that supports
because
it.
you cannot go back and pull one back from that time.
We have
match the
evidence that
two
supports it.
Well, you don't, because you can't.
Yeah,
go
the
back
evidence
a
that
billion
supports it is
years
the laboratory
and
experiments
say,
measuring the radioactive half-life of uranium-235 and uranium-238. That's evidence.
Here's the one. Yeah, here's the one 1 billion years ago, and here's the one today, and this study proves it that this is 1 billion years old.
Yep.
You go back in 1 billion.
Well, it doesn't
years
prove
and
it.
you
It provides evidence that it's 1 billion years old.
You can't prove it.
Nobody's asking for proof. We're talking about evidence.
Well, okay, you can't show the evidence to make your point.
Yeah, I just told you
because
about the evidence.
the evidence is man-made.
No, it's not. It's
So-
the zircon crystals are not man-made. Zircon crystals are found in the ground.
The results of what you're saying.
The result.
But
so look, we
line-
examine a zircon crystal. We use what we know about the natural world, the conclusions that we come to via evidence, like uranium is radioactive, it decays. We know how quickly it decays. So we examine the zircon crystals and we examine the chemistry that's involved there, and we find, oh, hey, look, there's uranium and lead in these zircon crystals, but the chemistry of zircon crystals doesn't allow for lead to enter them. Therefore, we come to the only reasonable conclusion, which is that the uranium, which is known to decay into lead, did decay into lead. And then we ask, well, okay, so the uranium decayed into lead. How long did that take? Well, we know how long it takes. We know how quickly uranium decays. So we can then extrapolate, using the data that we have, how long ago that zircon crystal formed. And lo and behold, we get billions of years.
Well, yeah, and I get it. You're very intellectual. And again, that's why I'm calling to say you're the proof of creation, because you are intelligent to a certain degree.
Did we just reset?
Okay, so let's go to the Bible.
Okay.
So the Bible is obviously why I believe in Christianity. So, as an atheist, you don't, obviously you read the Bible many times. My guess, how many times would you say?
I have not read the entirety of the Christian Bible. Well, at this point I may have, because I've read enough snippets, but honestly, I've tried to sit down and read it. It is so boring. I've tried to sit down and read it front to back, but it's so boring.
Yeah, and I always tell people to start in the Gospel of John, because Jesus was John's closest friend, and John was very clear on the gospel, what the good news is. So getting back to a creator in is there one? If there is a creator, and this is my logic, if there is a creator who created us with fingerprints and eyes and a nose and senses that we just can't even imagine, if there is a creator that could do this, obviously he could give us a book. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, and you would think that the book would be filled with things that allow for the verification of the truth of the book.
Right. So basically, the Bible says by many infallible proofs, Christ showed himself alive by,
yeah, so one would expect that there would be those infallible proofs to be found, but I can't find any.
Yeah. So if, like Dr. Simon Greenleaf was a royal professor at Harvard University, you've probably never heard of him, but
never heard of him.
His classmates, he wrote a book on, he was an atheist, and his classmates challenged him to study the Bible and see if the resurrection was true. And he concluded in his book that he wrote, Simon Greenleaf, you can go look it up, that if the evidence was to be brought forth in any unbiased courtroom, the evidence would be known as historical fact. And that was an atheist who became a believer. Because
that's a wild claim. I mean,
yeah,
maybe that was his position. I don't think that that's a good position to hold. I don't think that that's true.
Well, he looked at the evidence, and the point I'm saying
I'm
is
familiar with the evidence. The evidence is, so the evidence that we have is at best 30 years-ish, 40 years-ish texts written after the fact by people that we don't know, and in perhaps contradictory ways, like the story has incompatibilities amongst the peoples who are writing about this. And even setting aside the quality of evidence, you would never find any claims of supernatural stuff being verified in a courtroom, because it turns out that verifying the supernatural happened is nigh impossible.
Well, if you look at the evidence, it's there, just like you look at the evidence.
Do you want to talk about the evidence? We can talk about the evidence if you want. I mean, I went over my evidence, so surely it'd be only fair for you to let you go over your evidence.
What's
the evidence?
Well, first thing is the disciples, they gave their lives not for a lie, but for something that was truth.
Are you sure? How do you know that they gave their lives?
Well, we all know that 11 out of the 12.
We all know?
Including Paul.
How do we know that that's true?
Were martyred.
How do we know that that's true?
Well,
Where's the accounts of this?
Because it's all.
We know that James was executed.
You haven't studied, obviously. And,
I haven't studied. Okay, so, can you provide for me a source that is not within the Bible itself?
Well,
that makes the claim.
Once, and you said it a few things. My point is, if you open up the Bible, and if there is a God, and you ask him to reveal yourself to him.
God, can you reveal yourself to me?
The Bible says, you shall seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. You will be a powerhouse one day.
Where is he? I just did it.
Yeah. Well, the Bible also says he has not revealed himself to the wise and prudent, but unto babes. So basically,
you have to be ignorant in order to believe.
No, you have to have a childlike faith in what.
Look, God gave us these big old brains to do these big old thinking bits. Why would he want us to be ignorant and naive in order to come to believe in him?
Be ignorant. You look at the truth in the Bible, and you come with all these prophecies, and you see that God is true.
You just told me that you have to have childlike faith. You have to have the look. When we talk about childlike faith, this is usually something that's naive. Like, children have a childlike faith in Santa Claus. right? And obviously
Yeah, but
Santa
we
Claus
have-
isn't real. They're just naive, right? They just
Right,
don't know
but we
better.
have what's
Why do you
called a
want me to be naive?
Because we have a childlike faith and evidence. So in other
So
words,
what's the
when I
evidence?
say a childlike faith, we have evidence of a savior not in
So
the
what-
grave.
so what's
because he
the
rose
evidence?
From the grave. We got witnesses. We've got
Who?
Bible.
Who are the
prophecy
witnesses?
So all throughout history, people have talked about they've seen Jesus. Even
All right,
in
well,
China.
well, look. Lots of
I mean,
people,
there's over
lots of people see
500
Jesus. That's not particularly compelling evidence that Jesus rose from the dead.
Well, I'm talking about 500 people during his time.
Sorry, who are these
We've got
people?
not only that.
Who are these people?
Who are they?
Yeah.
You read history books.
Wait, so we don't know who they were? So just to be clear, saying that 500 people saw something would not fly in a courtroom. It wouldn't fly in a courtroom as evidence. So who are these people?
Well, examine every thread of all the evidence, and you'll come.
So
to
what's the evidence
conclusion.
then?
This is a fact. I didn't have to go through all the evidence.
Well, okay.
I put my faith
Apparently,
and trust-
evidence is not something that's important for you to form beliefs, but it is for me.
No,
so, like,
because-
what's the evidence?
Yeah, it's kind of like evolution. I don't have to go back a billion years. I just
What's
put
the
my faith
what's
in
the
it.
evidence?
So the second point will be prophecy.
Okay.
There's a lot of
Can you give me an
prophecy in the
example?
Bible. Well, I mean, there's over 300 scriptures that talk about the resurrection of Christ.
Can you give me an
before
example?
He actually rose from the grave.
Can you give me
So,
can you
know,
give me an
there-
example of say
well,
3?
The Old Testament talked about.
I
that
want
he
examples,
would be
not just like the
betrayed
Old
for-
Testament. Can you give me
Oh,
examples?
okay. Yeah, he would be betrayed for 30 pieces. He would be, his beard would be plucked.
Okay,
He
so
would be
where are these?
crucified.
We can go look at these verses if you want.
Well, sure. I mean, I got
Let's do
300
it.
of them.
Let's do it. Just pick 3. Pick your favorite 3.
Okay, let's pick 3. Okay, the first one I would say is out of the 300, let's go with this one. This one is found in they mocked him.
In the what?
Psalms. They mocked
Okay,
him.
so what's the verse?
Well, I'll tell you what. You pick 3 that you think would be good.
I don't think that there are any, so I'd love you to just tell me the ones that you think are true.
Okay. Sold for 30 pieces of
Okay,
silver.
what's the
That's
verse?
his case.
What's the verse?
Zechariah
Okay.
11, verse 12. That was in 487 BC. It was written.
Zechariah 11. Well, I don't know if that's true, but sure. We can look. We can look here. We'll look for Zechariah 11, verse 12. So we have. Hold on, I'm pulling it up for you. For everybody, even. So. We have Zechariah 11, verse 12. I'm going to pull up the whole thing. So verse 12 is here. Then I took my... I'm just going to read some context beforehand, okay? Hopefully that's fair.
Yep.
I just want to put this here. Then I took my staff called Favor and broke it, revoking the covenant I had made with all the nations. It was revoked on that day, so the oppressed of the flock who were watching me knew it was the word of the Lord. I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. So it seems like that what we're talking about is, this is 30 pieces of silver that's taken by the prophet, not by the betrayer. So how is this a prophecy about Jesus being betrayed for 30 pieces of silver?
It correlates with Matthew 26:15.
Well, right, but this is 30 pieces of silver taken by the prophet. It's not taken by the betrayer.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's
this
why
isn't. So this prophecy didn't come true. Jesus, the prophet, didn't take the 30 pieces of silver. This prophecy failed.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it failed. It's
Well, I mean, it's definitely not about Jesus, because Jesus, the prophet, didn't take 30 pieces of silver.
Nailed to a cross.
But that's not what the prophecy says.
Well,
The alleged prophecy, anyway.
give me my price. Give me my price. So they weighed, and it was 30 pieces of silver.
Yeah,
So,
they gave 30 pieces of silver to the prophet, and that's not what happened to Jesus.
That was the price.
But
And
Jesus.
that's-
So wait. So in Zechariah, the prophet is given 30 pieces of silver, right? But that didn't happen to Jesus. Jesus wasn't given 30 pieces of silver.
Well, it's symbolic, obviously. It's
Okay,
not
so the prophecy
literal.
fails, right? This is not a prophecy of anything
Well,
that
that would
had to do with Jesus. Okay,
Yeah,
what's the next
that's-
best one?
Nailed to a cross.
Okay, where is that? What verse is that?
Psalms 22:16.
Okay, let's pull that up. 1 sec. Oh, is this the one that I think it is? Yeah, okay. This is the one that I think it is. This is the one with a contentious translation. So here we have Psalms 22. So this is the dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircle me. They pierce, that's the questionable thing. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. So, okay, there's a few things to talk about here. First, this word pierce is contentiously translated. The earliest source that we have is not the word pierce. It's not even a word close to pierce. At best, what you're going to get is at best you're going to get they dug at my hands and my feet. But the earliest text that we have it's actually not even a Hebrew word. It's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls for this particular verse. There's two different translations that you can make. One of them is what is it? It's they are like lions at my hands and my feet, or they dug my hands and my feet. So the question is this actually even talking about piercing? Probably not. More likely they're talking about using an analogy, like the lions are at my hands and my feet, because throughout the rest of the psalm, they use the language of animals to describe the foes of the person. We talk about dogs. We talk about the mouth of lions, the horns of wild oxen. So it seems plausible that this is probably incorrectly translated. This is the Christian translation, by the way, not the Jewish translation. The Jewish translation has like a lion there at my hands and my feet. But even if I grant that this says they pierce, this is not a prophecy. This is something that's taking place in the present. David is complaining about how everybody's attacking him, metaphorically, of course. So this is not a prophecy about something that will happen in the future. It's David complaining. So how is this a prophecy at all?
Well, John 19 says they crucified him, which is
right. But this isn't about the future, right?
Well, that's your interpretation. That's
no. I mean, it's not written in future tense. It's just written about as David. It's written, presumably by David, but who knows? It's written as if David is just being attacked. So David lived hundreds of years before Jesus. So this can't be about Jesus if this is about something that is happening to David.
Well, if you look a few verses before that, in verse 1, Psalms 21, it says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Oh, that's a different psalm, though.
Well, no, it's the same chapter, 22, verse 1. You're looking at 22, 16.
Oh, well, you said 21. Yeah. So Jesus quotes this. That's not a prophecy.
Well, on Matthew 27, Jesus cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Well, yeah, Jesus was quoting the psalm.
Obviously,
that's not a prophecy.
Jesus is fulfilling the prophecy.
What's the prophecy? What's the prophecy? Where does it say, in the future, this will happen? Where does it say that?
Well, it doesn't say it.
So then it's not a prophecy.
Well, you got to read between the lines. That's you're not wanting to.
You mean you have to infer your dogma from the text that it doesn't say?
Yeah, but you've already come to your conclusion on these verses because you've already gone through them. So
yeah, I'm familiar with these, and as far as I know, there are no prophecies that have come true about Jesus. In fact, there are prophecies that Jesus has failed. Like, for example, why was Jesus riding a foal and a mother donkey? Why were there two donkeys that Jesus was riding?
Shoot, I don't know. Tell me.
Because the authors who were writing the Christian Bible misread the Hebrew, and they thought that they were describing two donkeys when rather they were describing a single donkey. And so that's why Jesus is apparently riding two donkeys into town rather than just one, like a normal person.
So basically, your take on scriptures is man-made and not God-breathed. For example,
yeah, of course.
I believe, that this was an intelligent designer that created.
Can I show you Zechariah 9? Can I show you Zechariah 9:9?
Sure.
Okay, 1 sec. Sorry, it's not refreshing. Okay, we want Zechariah 9:9. And then we can look at the whole thing. So here's the verse. So this is the part that Jesus allegedly fulfilled. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Right? So would you interpret this to mean that this donkey is a colt, which is the foal of a donkey? That this that the king will ride in on a single donkey, or do you think that this is meant to read as the king will ride in on 2 donkeys?
Are you looking at what version there?
This is the NIV, but we can use whatever version you want.
Yeah, King James version is the
Okay.
that I prefer.
Of course.
But,
By the way, the King James version is the worst version, but go off, King.
To me, it's like, yeah, there's.
Yeah, it's the same thing. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. It's the same thing. So, is this talking about does the king come in riding on 1 donkey or on 2 donkeys?
And riding on a donkey.
Okay. Now, do you want to go look at the bit in Matthew 21?
Sure.
Okay, let's go talk about Matthew 21. Okay. So now, here's Jesus talking. Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying unto them, Go into the village over against you, and straightway you shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them unto me. So he's bringing 2 donkeys with him. Why is he bringing 2 donkeys? And brought the ass and the colt and put them on their clothes, and they set him thereon. So now he's riding on 2 donkeys. Why is he riding on 2 donkeys?
I don't know.
Because they misread the prophecy in Zechariah.
So I'm sure you got like 300 more like scriptures.
This is just the funny one. So like, why is it that so the one so this is an example of a prophecy that like could have been fulfilled. And by the way, the people fulfilling a prophecy just means that people knew about the prophecies, and so when they wrote the book so that it seemed like he was fulfilling them. It didn't even have to happen. But this could have been easily done, except they obviously screwed it up when they wrote it down. They obviously didn't understand what the Zechariah prophecy was about. And so they thought that it meant that he's supposed to ride in on 2 donkeys rather than 1. Isn't that a little concerning?
Well, I admire your great knowledge on the scriptures and looking up flaws that seem to be. However, I don't think they're flaws.
Okay, so then why was Jesus riding in on 2 donkeys?
Well, I don't have the answers for everything.
Oh, maybe it's because
because I have faith in the things that I don't understand, that God's got a. So, for example, the Bible actually says we see through a mirror dimly. The Bible says that God is. We can't understand, obviously, and that's why we have to take it by faith, like a faith in as a child. And the Bible says the secret things belong to the Lord. There are things that we will never know until we get to heaven. So, for example, I don't have all the answers, but that's okay because I got enough answers that give me enough faith and belief that there is a God. So, in other words, there's enough in the Bible that makes it clear to me.
But the prophecies which you were providing as evidence, because look, if prophecies were actually fulfilled, that would be evidence, right? That'd be evidence of something supernatural happening. But the prophecies, the example of prophecies that you gave me, they weren't fulfilled, or they weren't prophecies, or both.
All 3 of them. All 300 that I have.
The third one that I gave you only gave me 2, by the way, not 3. The third one that I gave you, the one from Zechariah 9:9 and 9:10, that was an explicit prophecy that wasn't fulfilled. It was incorrectly fulfilled.
Well, the third one was in the beginning of Psalms 22. So,
but that's not a prophecy. That's just David talking and then Jesus quoting David. There's no prophecy there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of similarities, like 300 of them throughout the Bible.
But you keep saying that, but of the 3 that you offered me, none of them are prophecies that were fulfilled.
Well, yeah, according to your interpretation, that's fine.
According to the plain text reading of the text, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I take it a little more faith-based, and you take it a little more.
I'm looking for evidence.
Which is fine. And again, to me, your brain and your knowledge is based on what God has given you, and that in itself is a creation. That there's a creator because you are intelligent. So again, my evidence for a God would be you, because and
we've circled back for the 3rd time, I guess.
Okay, well, it takes a lot more faith to believe in no God than to believe in a God. So you do have faith, it's just in no God.
Okay, I don't think that it's faith to rely on evidence.
Well, I mean, you're the evidence that I'm using because creation is the evidence of a God.
You haven't drawn the connecting line between I exist to therefore God exists. There's no
Because
evidence has to have some sort of, like, you have to be able to logically link the data to the conclusion. So what's the logical link there?
You're an intelligent design. You have a wife that is intelligently designed.
Well, I don't think that we're designed at all.
You have any children?
What's the evidence for that? No, I don't have any children.
Oh. Well, one day you will, and you'll hold a baby, and you might
Perhaps,
come
yeah.
to the conclusion that, wow, this is an amazing creation.
And one
Maybe
day,
there
do you have
is
any
a
children?
God. Yes, I do. I get 2, and I get 4 grandchildren.
How old are your grandchildren, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, actually, one just got home, and he's standing in front of me. He's how old are you now, Dylan? He's 8 years old.
Well,
so, yeah.
maybe one day you'll have great-grandchildren. God willing, right? And you'll look at those great-grandchildren and you'll be like, man, these guys are such assholes. Maybe there isn't a God after all.
Well, you know what? Time will tell. But the thing of it is the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when they are old, they will not depart, because they've been given.
Why do you have to
the truth of the
indoctrinate
Bible.
children in order to come to the correct conclusion?
Because that's what he's called us to do, and that's why my name says.
Doesn't that
Tom
seem?
Dot share your faith? Because
Doesn't that seem
we are
kind
to
of?
share faith?
Doesn't that seem kind of suspicious, though? Like, it seems a little bit suspicious that you have to teach someone something while they're a child and still, because children are stupid, right? Like, we understand that children are dumb. They believe everything they believe basically anything that you tell them.
They're learning.
Yeah, of course. They just don't know a lot because they're children.
And we're learning too as adults.
Right, but we know more. We have developed prefrontal cortexes, and we have experience
You would
as
agree
adults.
that we're learning too, though. We haven't arrived.
Of course we're learning, but we're not naive anymore. Right, we're not children, so it seems a little bit unusual that we have that the goal of the method of spreading your religion is teach it to the children, so that they don't question it. Like, why?
Jesus said, "Let the children come unto me." For such is the kingdom of God.
That is really suspicious. That the best way to spread the truth is to teach it to people who don't know better than to question.
And then when they grow old, they can study it for themselves. And that's why Jesus said,
but they've already been indoctrinated. They've already been indoctrinated when they were children.
Jesus said, "Make disciples."
Yeah. So you're just suggesting that indoctrination is a good thing? That we shouldn't let people
Well, I'm saying the Bible
critically analyze the claims?
Should be propagated to be truth. And when an individual examines the truth for themselves,
so then let them examine it themselves rather than forcing it on children.
I'm not for it. No, but you convince a man against his will, and nevertheless he's the same still.
Look,
Obviously,
men and children are different, right? If you tell a kid that Santa Claus exists, they will believe you. They won't investigate it. They'll just believe you.
Correct.
That's what you're doing with Jesus. You're saying, well, Jesus exists and Jesus died for your sins, and if you don't believe, then you go to hell. And that's indoctrination.
They don't get to go to heaven based on mom and dad's belief and what I tell them.
That's indoctrination.
They get to go to heaven. They're
not analyzing the claims critically. They're just believing what their parents told them when they were kids. And that's what happened to you too, I suspect.
When they get older, they can confirm that Santa Claus was a lie and the Bible is the truth. That is a confirmation.
That only happens after they've been indoctrinated. Do you know how easy it is to convince yourself that something is true when you were already indoctrinated to believe it?
No, because I found out to be truth for myself as I grew older. It confirmed. The Bible confirmed that it was
confirmed
true.
itself. Yeah, you were indoctrinated in it as a child, and then you confirmed your belief. Were your parents Christian?
I was shared as a truth when I was 7 years old.
Okay, and did you go to church when you were younger?
Yes.
Okay, so that's indoctrination.
No, it's learning the truth.
Every Sunday, you would show up in a building where a guy would tell you that Jesus died for your sins. That's indoctrination.
That's called truth.
It might be whether or not it's true. Tom, I'm trying to be charitable here. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But just telling kids that is indoctrination, whether or not it's true. Because they're not critically analyzing it. They're not evaluating it for themselves. They're just believing you because a big person told them it. That's how children work. So if you want people to actually come to the truth, like maybe this is true, if you want people to come to the truth, then what you should do is you should not teach it to them when they're still naive children, and let them come to the truth by evaluating the claims critically.
Well, I do both. I teach adults and I teach children.
No, you should. What I'm saying is you shouldn't teach children. That is indoctrination.
Okay, then they shouldn't go to school. Why do they go to school? They go to school to learn the truth.
They
So
go to
it's
school to
true.
learn facts about the world, and these are verifiable facts. But you're saying that these are not verifiable. You can't. You have to come through faith. So let them come through faith once they're old enough to come to that decision on their own, rather than forcing it on them.
Well, they teach these fairy tale lies by indoctrinating them in the school system about evolution. It's a
Except
bold-faced
evolution is
lie.
like something
They're
that you can
doing the
verify yourself. It's
same-
scientific. There's scientific
They're
evidence for it.
doing the same thing. An explosion
really.
happened billions of years ago. They're indoctrinating lies to children, and you're telling me, let's use the word instead of teaching. You're indoctrinating. I'm indoctrinating when I
Yeah,
talk
we can.
about
Yeah.
religion.
So let's
But
say.
when you do the same thing in public schools, they're not indoctrinated. They're
Yeah,
being
because
taught.
what's
They're
happening in
being
public
taught
schools.
Evidence.
What's
There is no evidence.
What's
on the
happening
Big
in schools
Bang.
is that there absolutely is, and we can talk about that. But what's happening in schools is that
Nobody was
facts
there
of the
billions
world,
of years.
facts of the world are being described, and at least in a good school. I can't speak for all public schools. Obviously some public schools are going to be shitty, but at least in a good school, they will explain how we know that this is true. Right? They'll say, here's the evidence for why we think that. Plants have cell walls. That's a fact that you learn in biology class, right?
I'm not talking about minor transitions. I'm talking about.
I wasn't talking
bold-faced
about
lies.
transitions either. I was just talking about some random scientific fact, like plants have cell walls, or
No,
or that the moon is made of the same stuff that the Earth is made out of. That's a fact,
Well,
and then
use
you can
the
explain
lies.
why it's a fact.
Yeah, but use the lies that the textbooks say.
What lies?
These bones prove.
What lies are we
these
talking
bones
about?
Prove. Well, these bones prove that
No,
there's major
these bones provide
transitions.
evidence for major transitions.
There's
yeah.
no evidence.
You keep
when
saying there's no
they're
evidence, but you
dead.
just told me what the
There's
evidence
bones.
is. Bones are
They're
evidence.
just bones.
Wait, you
bones
think
don't prove anything.
you think that bones can't provide evidence for anything? I mean, like we use bones when we do
You
forensic
can't use
analysis all the time.
bones to provide a transition of something major.
The transition
There's
does.
no
Okay,
proof.
hold on. So Tom, and like we can just turn this down because that's totally fine. We were, things were getting heated. So just to be clear, nobody's ever claiming that the bones show evidence of the bones transitioning. What the claim is that you see bones from this time period, and then on top of them, bones from a later time period, and you can see a transition between those two. There's a gradual difference, or there's a slight difference between those two sets of bones. That's the transition that's being talked about. It's not a transition in an individual set of bones. It's a transition between sets of bones. Does that make sense?
And that's the lie in the textbooks.
Well,
so for example,
wait, do you not agree that
nobody
we can see gradual differences in sets of bones across different layers?
Yeah, but they're observed of being bones. They're not transitions.
The bones.
Animals
Nobody's ever
showing.
Nobody's ever making the claim, and it's like you didn't listen to me.
Well, they're in the textbooks.
Nobody's ever making the claim. They're absolutely not. Nobody's ever making the claim that the bones show evidence of the individual creature that died was transitioning. It's not the claim.
No, the claim is that it transitioned from this type.
No,
a species
the
to
transition.
this type of species.
The claim.
How men evolved. They give you all
claim.
from a monkey going up to a human being. You've seen those pictures.
The claim is that you have one set of organisms, a population of organisms, call them, I don't know, elephant rats or whatever. And we see the bones for the elephant rats in one layer of dirt, and then slightly above in that layer of dirt, maybe 6 inches or a foot or whatever it is, layer of rock, we see different bones that aren't quite the same as the bones lower down, but they're fairly similar. That's the transition that's being discussed. And so what this is describing is you have a whole population of these elephant rats, and over the course of a long period of time, not individual elephant rats, but each subsequent generation of elephant rats is slightly different relative to the previous generation. So no one individual is changing. It's that each next generation is a little bit different than the generation before it. That's the transition that we're talking about.
Well, the transition is kind of skewed when you look at what's being indoctrinated in the school system to show this is evidence of transitions when it's not. There is no evidence. They're just bones, is my point.
Okay, so what do you how would you describe it if you saw, okay, so do we agree that the bones on top were put there, however they got there, were put there after the bones below them? Would you agree on that?
Well, it depends on the facts of seeing bones and bones. And
In most, let's say in most cases, the bones below are older than the bones above.
Well, that means there was bones below in a certain type of species that were older. Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, so if you see bones below and then similar but different bones above, and you check all across like an entire area, you see one kind of bones at one layer, and then slightly above it, you have a different kind of bone, slightly different kind of bone above it. What would be a reasonable inference that you could conclude from that
You have
set
a
of
different
data?
species. You
Okay.
have a different species.
So
there.
where did the first layer species go, and where did the second layer species come from?
Well, that's part of where the evidence is flawed, because they're making it appear like there's different levels of sand and there's bones that are continually changing in the depth of the sand, where that's not the case.
What I'm asking is, if this was the case, if this was
that's
found,
why it's not the case.
Please, I'm
Because
asking you
you're
to engage in
finding-
a hypothetical. If this was the case, what would be the reasonable conclusion?
Well, obviously, the reasonable conclusion is there's different species at different times, at different time periods, you know.
So where did
on
the old
Earth.
species go, and where did the new species come from?
Well, they're finding old species on the top of the levels. They don't got to go down.
Look, this is a
deep to find
hypothetical. I don't like just engage with the hypothetical.
I know.
So
But
if
yes,
let's say
obviously
you
that would make
investigated
sense.
all of Wyoming, and everywhere in Wyoming, if you dug 6 feet down, you found one kind of bones, and if you dug 5.5 feet down, you found a different kind of bones. What would be
As
the
a hypothetical, yes.
Yes, this is
your
hypothetical.
conclusion
What would be the
correct.
reasonable conclusion?
The reasonable conclusion is there's obviously different species at different times in different parts of
Right,
the ground.
and so what would be the reasonable explanation for where the lower species went and where the upper species came from?
Yeah, but you're talking about a fairy tale. That's not true.
It's a
Hypothetically,
hypothetical.
you would say-
Please engage with the hypothetical.
hypothetically, you would say, yes, there's different species, just like.
I'm asking where
hypothetically,
where they came from, right? Did they just like spontaneously appear out of nowhere? Like, what's the
Well,
reasonable
God
conclusion that you
created
can come
them all
from?
God created them all in 1 week. So hypothetically, if God created all the animals in 1 week, and there's different things like a flood that happened, obviously, there's going to be, you know, different layers of animals at different times, you know, like dinosaurs, you know, you got transitions of dinosaurs. Well, does that mean there's never a dinosaur? No, there are dinosaurs.
I don't know why you're
So-
not engaging with the hypothetical.
Well, the hypothetical, I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying.
So the
If it was
hypothetical,
inappropriate-
so in this hypothetical, all of Wyoming, if you dig 6 feet down, you find an elephant rat. And you dig 5.5 feet down, you find an elephant rat that's slightly different, right? So, and we agreed that the ones that are lower down, they were put there earlier. Regardless of how they got there, it was definitely earlier.
Right.
At least in most
Right.
cases. So
Yeah.
what is the conclusion? So let's say, I don't know. The amount of time is X.
As a hypothetical, you could say a dinosaur is on the bottom, an elephant was in the mid-range, and
No,
a
that's
bird was
not.
on
That,
top.
why are you changing
Now
my
look,
hypothetical?
they're all-
Why are you changing my hypothetical? My hypothetical is an elephant rat, and then a slightly different thing that's almost an elephant rat, but not quite. So what's the
Okay, so
reasonable
yeah, so-
conclusion about where the elephant rats went and where the slightly different elephant rats came from?
Well, the elephant rats obviously were different species.
Yeah,
Over
yeah. So
different-
they're a different species. What is the do you have any sort of inference that you can draw about why we don't see the bones of the slightly different elephant rats in lower layers?
Well, because they weren't there at that time. So,
So
for
where do they come
example,
from?
We would have to say there were none over there
Mhm.
because you haven't dug up the same depth at some other location where they were.
So we checked all
So,
of Wyoming, and this is true across the entirety of Wyoming.
Yeah, I mean, they might be over in China, and they moved over here to
Okay,
you know,
so
5,000 years
if
later.
you stumbled upon this, you know, this data that across all of Wyoming, 6 feet down you see elephant rats, and 5.5 feet down you see the bones of slightly modified elephant rats, but you don't see any more bones of elephant rats anymore. You would say, well, there's nothing we can learn from this.
Well, what do you mean by elephant rats and slightly different elephant rats?
So think of like
you
the
have
bones of like
dogs
an
and
elephant rat is
dogs.
like a made up thing. Maybe it's a real thing, but I'm just imagining it's like some made up like funny looking rat thing. And
Yeah.
then so we can tell what it is from its bones because you know bones tell you a lot about an animal. And then in the slightly higher layer, the bones are just like a little bit different, but uniformly different. So like you know, maybe like the snout is like longer, like the snout or the skull is like longer in one way, or maybe its arms are like shorter in a different way, or maybe it has like an extra vertebrate on the tail, or whatever it might be. But initially, you have all of these elephant rat fossils that are basically all the same, slightly different sizes, of course, because populations vary. But then in the next layer, you have all of these modified elephant rats that are all the same, but they're all different from the ones below them.
Well, I would say minor transitions you would have. Major transitions would be like what they
Okay, so you
teach.
would say that you would say that these fossils
Well,
would be an
no, I
example
would
of
say-
transition?
Well, the hypothetical story that you're using is, I would say, on the very top, you have humans walking around, and the transitions basically evolved from the elephant rat all the way to humans, and that's the fairy tale they're telling.
Well, wait a
in
minute. So
schools.
you just agreed, and I just want to clarify. You just agreed that in the hypothetical, this would be evidence of a transition from the elephant rats to the slightly different elephant rats?
I would agree with minor transitions, like a big dog and a little dog.
Okay,
like
now what's the difference between a minor transition and a major transition?
Well, so for example, a major transition would be an elephant, having a baby that pops out a bobcat.
Well, so hear me out.
Okay, so
what if
that's a major transition?
So hear me out, Tom. What if you had an elephant rat that in the next transition, minor transition, its arms got a little longer, and then in the next transition, the hips rotated a little bit, and then in the next transition, the skull was a little bigger, and then in the next transition, the spine straightened out a little bit, and then in the next transition, the fingers became more adept, and then in the next transition, the feet the back feet differentiated a little bit from the front feet, and after 100 transitions like this, you wind up with something that looks like an ape rather than an elephant rat. What's so far-fetched about that?
Well, because like I said earlier, I admire your faith in time.
Okay.
Because time
You just
is
can't
a
engage with the
religion.
hypothetical.
No, you're using a hypothetical.
You
so I'm
agreed
saying
that you can have
time-
small transitions. What if you have a bunch
I
of small
agree
transitions in a
over
row?
time. I agree you could have small transitions, but you cannot have major
What if you have
transitions.
a lot of small transitions in a row? What would you call that?
We've never observed a major transition.
Why can't you answer my question? If you have
that's fake.
100
What's your
minor
question?
transitions in a row, what would you call that?
Well, we see that in dogs, and we see a lot of minor transitions in dogs.
No, you
Big
don't.
Dogs, little dogs, Chihuahuas, Great Danes, they're all minor transition. It's still a dog. We don't see a dog.
I'm talking about 100
producing-
sequential minor transitions, not
We
100
have
different, not like a branching out, but sequential minor
We have not
transitions.
seen 100
I'm
transitions.
asking you hypothetically if we had. What would you call that?
There's evolution because we could observe it.
Okay.
If you can't
So
observe it, you gotta call it
fortunately
fake.
we do have evidence of sequential evolution. We have so many fossils
So
that
what
demonstrate
major
this.
transitions? Those are bones.
No, what I'm
They're not
describing is
transitions.
sequential minor transitions leading to major transitions.
There's no transition that we have ever observed. That's fake.
We absolutely have, and you can go look at the fossil record.
So
Tom,
what
been a
is-
delight, but I have to let you go because the live stream has to end. But he did agree to minor transitions, which is good. It's just for some reason the anti-evolution crowd, they have a really hard time understanding that if you put a whole bunch of minor transitions, if you line them all up, they look a lot like a major transition, right? So let's read some super chats and then we'll call it there. From Dr. Fudge with the $10. Look at the trees, weak. Look at the Blitz, based. Honestly. From Grimmy with the $5. Eternal life cheapens the value of the limited time we have on this planet. I agree. Like, if you think that you're gonna have an eternal paradise, why bother taking care of the planet? From Dr. Fudge again, this isn't a debate, this is youth pastor level preaching. Yeah, I kind of expected that going in. But it was, it was hopefully a worthwhile conversation. From Carl Grimes with the $5. I have perfect intelligent design. I swallow and breathe through the same hole and can choke to death from eating, which is required to live. That's true. That does happen. From Grimmy with the $2. Yes, God is a bottom. You heard it here. God is a bottom. From Ekapo with the 250 euros. Ray Comfort sounds different today. Yeah, he definitely listened to Ray Comfort a lot. That's true. From Adam Hurst with the $12. Keep up the good work. You make work tolerable most days. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I won't be available for the next 2 weeks to keep work tolerable. But I'm going to try to make sure that there's content for you guys to watch at least every other day on YouTube for debate content. From Jack Fetter with the $2. Wow, and that call started so promising too. If a call starts with glazing, it almost always ends that way. From Keys Plays Games, the $5. So DNA evidence used to solve cold cases is considered faith? Got it. Yep. Yes, it is. You heard it here first, folks. From Jack Better again with the $2. Geez, Blitz, turns out you debunk your own. It's true, I do. From Grimmy again with the $10. Actually, the individual who would probably want to be part of one of the most manipulative pieces of literature would probably be the great deceiver in said literature rather than your all good God. That's true. That's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, like, God does kind of act like a deceiver. If your goal is to like teach them to children rather than to well-informed adults, then I don't know, it seems kind of deceptive, kind of nefarious. From Super Pizza with the $5, but Blitz, Santa is real. The proof is in The Nightmare Before Christmas. And obviously that book is accurate because it's inspired by Santa and he's real. There you go. From Carl Grimes with the $5, I have faith in things I don't understand. Now let me vote to force these beliefs that I don't understand onto you too. Yeah, I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. From Chase with the $5, can I pay for a title request for this caller's video? Creationist Jukebox plays all of the greatest hits. That's a good one. Yep. Creationist Jukebox plays all of the greatest hits. So I would, the only thing is I need to figure out which word to make it all capitals, because apparently if you make one of the words all capitals in a YouTube title, it grabs people's attention more. And I hate that that's the reality, but that is the reality. I'll figure it out. From Super Pizza with the $2, but the explosion, I know, right? But the explosion. From Relax with Russell with the $5, I wonder if Tom teaches adults and gets new believers or just reinforces the beliefs of adults who had already been indoctrinated as children. Yeah, I suspect as much. Yeah, I think jukebox is the word to make capitalize. Caps every third word. Yeah, it's definitely jukebox. From CSS with the $20, so very generous of you, very much appreciated. The beauty of science and history is the intersection of anomalous circumstance. Great floods in Idaho caused inversion of local fossil records due to ruptures and crustal overturn. Absolution is the enemy of logical conclusion. Okay, well I appreciate the $20. Not really sure what you're trying to say, but thank you. From Garain with the $2, I believe in inches, but miles are fake. Indeed, miles are fake. And from Pensive with the $20, have a great vacation, Doctor. I appreciate you, Pensive. Always good to see you here. Very, very much appreciated. And we will, all right, so let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything else. Actually, I gotta grab this. By the way, shout out to Justin for his Bad Bible spreadsheet. So if you don't know, Justin has a spreadsheet for all of Justin's arguments, just like how I have a note file for all of my arguments. And so if you want access to my notes, it's like $4 or $5 a month on YouTube. You can also join via Patreon. You can join via TikTok or via Twitch. You'll get access to the same stuff as long as you get access to the Discord role. So if you become a paying member anywhere, just DM one of the open a ticket on the Discord server and you can get access to the notes that way. But Justin also has a membership, and one of Justin's membership perks is his Bad Bible spreadsheet, which has a whole bunch of information on the Bible, which I like to use from time to time. So shout out to Justin for that. I'm going to check for some super chats, for some cash apps and things like that. But also we have another super chat from Dr. Ria, which is hilarious. Dr. Blitz, is there evidence to believe in free will, safe travels? I suspect not, but you know, other people will disagree. Let me just double check and make sure that there aren't any copies that have been bought. Just one from Grimlock from a while ago. And yeah, that should be everything. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in a few weeks. Make sure to pay attention to the Dr. Blitz Debunks YouTube channel. I will also be posting science content, trying to send science content on the regular when I'm on vacation, but we'll see. And yeah, until then, I'll see you in June. Take care.